Most respected today resource person, R.V. Bhuvaneshwari Madam, Chartered Accountant, dear faculty members, research scholars, students and other participants. Very good afternoon all of you. It is my pleasure to welcome everyone for 8th day sessions. Today topic is refund in GST. This session may be discussed in practical way with examples. The session will be more informative and useful to the participants. On behalf of Bharatiya University, I feel honored to welcome resource person R.V. Bhuvaneshwari Madam, Chartered Accountant Chennai, for giving a lecture on refunds in GST in today's sessions. I thank you very much, Madam, for accepting our invitation with your busy schedule and professional work. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, sir.
I am also delighted to introduce the resource person Bhuvaneshwari Madam. She did MCom in University of Madras in 2007 and postgraduate diploma in financial management in Pondicherry University in 2008. She qualified cost accountant in 2009 and chartered accountant in 2015. She was practicing as a cost accountant in Bhuvaneshwari & Co. during the period 2012 to 2015. At present, she is practicing as a chartered accountant and partner at Madhubalan and Associates, Chennai. She is also exclusively practicing indirect taxes and GST. She is currently a faculty member in CA coaching institutions for handling the subject of indirect taxes. She is a member of Indirect Tax Committee of Kanjipuram branch of ICAI and chairperson of Women Empowerment Committee of Kanjipuram branch of ICAI. She is a speaker for professional education sessions of different branches of ICAI. She has also acted as a resource person for the RUSA sponsored 10 days online national skill development program on GST, registration, assessment and filing of returns, base 1 and 2 conducted by Department of Commerce, Bharatiya University. This is the great opportunity is offered by Bharatiya University under RUSA. I trust you that everyone can enhance your skill and knowledge through this program. I heartily welcome everyone. I thank you all for your kind cooperation for the success of this program. Now I invite today resource person Bhuvaneshwari Madam to deliver your lecture today's sessions. Welcome you, ma'am.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. I just want to first I want to say thanks for giving me this opportunity to the entire Bharatiya University team and Mr. Jagadiswaran sir. Thank you very much. So today's session will be the other few hours will be discussing with GST refunds. So far for the past 7 sessions, you would have been dealing with topics related to the payment of taxes and filing of returns. And this is the one and only session where we are going to discuss about getting back the amount, that is getting back the taxes paid to the government by way of the GST refund claims. So the entire session will be covering section 54 of the CGST Act. So section 54 talks about the GST refund. So now let me share my presentation now. Now the refund has been categorized into different criteria. So based on this criteria only, we'll be able to claim the refunds. So whenever we want to apply for any refund, it has to be fitted into either of these category. Now these are called as the allowable heads. under which the refund will be granted by the department. So either way, a refund has to be fitted into any one of them. So for the first two pages, you can see I have given the categories for which we'll be claiming the refund. So now let me explain each of the categories in detail. So now the first category of refund is the refund of ITC on exports of goods and services without payment of tax. Now this is where the exporter will be exporting. So either it can be goods or services under a bond or a letter of undertaking. So what do we call it? Why do we call it as a letter of undertaking? So in short, we call it as LUT. The letter of undertaking is nothing but an online form which has to be submitted to the department, so that by we can ensure that we need not pay any IGST taxes on all the exports of goods or services that we are going to do in future. Now, submitting LUT, they can claim the refund of the unutilized input tax credit. So when you are not going to pay any output taxes, when you are not going to pay any taxes IGST on our exports or outward supply, obviously we will be having a huge amount of credit lying in our credit ledger. And now this unutilized amount of input tax credit is going to be claimed by way of a refund. So every exporter, before making the export, he is required to furnish the letter of undertaking in form GST RFD 11. So this is the name of the LUT. In LUT, we can call it as the form GST RFD 11. So this form can be submitted online to the jurisdictional commissioner. So it's a very simple form where it requires only just giving the witness details, two witness details who are related to your business, the name and address of those two people. So just by declaring the name and address of the witness, and by clicking on the submit button, we could have filed the letter of undertaking online. So it takes less than a minute process. So once after submitting, we'll be getting the application reference number, which we call it as the ARN number. So once when the ARN number is getting generated, we can say that we have filed the LUT online. So hereafter, the exporter, without making payment of any IGST, can make the exports of the goods or services. So, and also the exporter has to ensure that he has furnished all the GST returns in form GSTR 3B and GSTR 1. All the returns has to be properly filed by the exporter before claiming the refund. Now the next head is on account of supplies made to the cess unit or the cess developer without payment of taxes. Now what is mean by cess? A cess is nothing but a special economic zone. So it is a geographically diversified area where the business and the trade laws are slightly different from the rest of the country, because these cess they are located within the country's national border only. They are not located somewhere else out of India. They are within India only. Their main aim is to increase the trade balances, creating employment opportunities, creating the investment opportunities, job creation, and an effective administration. So mainly to encourage the business people to start up the business in these particular areas, to set up in these zone, financial policies are being introduced and also liberalized when compared to the other areas. So even companies may be offered tax holidays. Companies which are located in the cess unit are offered tax holidays also. So, and that's the reason why they are establishing themselves in that area, in that zone. So people may be getting interest to locate themselves within the cess unit. So they are because they are being granted a very lower percentage of taxation. So now coming back to the cess refund. Now this is the explanation of the cess unit. So the supplier who is making the unit located within the cess boundary, he has not paid any taxes on his outward supply, because a supplier should not collect any taxes from the cess unit because it is being exempted. Obviously, the supplier will be having a huge amount of credit in his accumulated electronic credit ledger, accumulated ITC. So these credits which are being accumulated in the credit ledger and not further utilized for payment of output taxes can be claimed by way of a refund under this particular category on account of supplies made to cess unit or cess developer without payment. Coming to the next category, refund on account of ITC accumulated due to inverter duty structure. Now, first you have to understand the term, what is meant by inverter duty structure. Now, this is a situation where how it happens. Suppose if the rate of taxes on your inputs are higher than the rate of taxes on your outputs. So except, now there is an exception to this, except the cases of outward supply which are nil rated or fully exempt supply. So these cannot be included under the term inverted tax structure. I'm only talking about the supply where the inward supply rate are more when compared to the outward supply rate. So refund cannot be claimed when the inward supply and the outward supply are being at an equal rate, or the outward supply are exempted. In that cases, we are not eligible to claim the refund. So say example, my inward supply rate is 18% and 28%. But when I make a finished product, the GST rate for the finished product is only 5%. So here I am having a huge differential taxes. Input it is 18 and 28, and output it is only 5%. So almost the difference of taxes which is being accumulated in the credit ledger can be claimed as a inverted duty structure refunds. The next category of refund on account of refund by recipient of deemed export. So now first we have to understand the term, what is mean by deemed export. Now these are supplies of goods that are notified by the government on the recommendation of the council as deemed export. So now there are few criteria also given under the deemed export. The goods supplied should not leave India, do not leave India. Payment for such supply is also received in Indian rupees or sometimes in convertible foreign exchanges, and such goods are also manufactured in India. Now for the following categories, we can call it as the we can declare it as a deemed exporter. So few examples are supplies of goods by a registered person against advance authorization scheme. So there is a scheme called advance authorization. So whenever there is a supply of goods under this particular scheme, under advance authorization, we may call it as a deemed export. Supply of capital goods by a registered person against the export promotion capital goods authorization. Now again, this is another type of scheme. So whenever the supplier supplies goods under this particular scheme, EPCG, we call it as, in short, we call it as EPCG, export promotion capital goods authorization scheme, then it will be called as the deemed export. Supply of goods by a registered person to an EOU unit. This is how we call it as export oriented unit. So whenever a supply is being done to EOU, we call it as a deemed export. Supply of gold by a bank or a public sector undertaking. So whenever the gold is supplied by a bank or any PSU units, public sector undertaking, we call it as a deemed export. Now if the recipient of the deemed export has paid the tax amount on his inward supply, so which means here the supplier of the deemed export has collected tax on his supply. So supplier has collected taxes, recipient has paid the taxes. Now this is, and obviously this has to be qualified as a deemed export, and the recipient also have taken the credit of the tax paid into his electronic credit ledger. So if I have paid my tax, naturally at the time of filing my return, I will transfer my credit to my electronic credit ledger. Now, in this scenario, the recipient of the deemed export can claim the refund of the tax amount paid by them. That is, whatever being transferred, whatever is being put as input tax into the electronic credit ledger, he can claim as the refund. Now, the recipient has to provide a declaration. So we have a lot of documentary proof which are being discussed in the subsequent slide. Now, a brief introduction of what is meant by deemed export. So now the recipient also has to provide a declaration that the supplier has neither claimed. Now under this scenario, only one person is allowed to claim the refund. Either the supplier has to claim the refund or the recipient has to claim the refund. Now in the first slide I have given on account of refund by recipient. In the next slide I have given on account of refund by supplier of deemed export. So either one of the party alone is allowed to claim the refund. Now since the category is under refund by recipient, the recipient has to provide a declaration that the supplier has neither claimed the refund nor he will be claiming the refund in future for the said supplies. The next head is refund on account of supplies to SIS unit or a SIS developer with payment of taxes. Now already we have discussed the head on account of supplies made to SIS without payment. Now here comes with payment. So this is the vice versa situation of the second category where the supplier is going to pay the taxes and then claim the refund back. Now, refund supplier has paid the IGST at the time of making the outward supply to the SIS unit or the SIS developer. Now, the taxes paid on those outward supply will be claimed as a refund by the supplier, which means the taxes which has been paid to the government by way of output tax will now again be claimed as refund under this category. The next category, export of services with the payment of taxes. So the exporter may supply services. So in the first category, we have seen without payment. And now here comes the category, export of services with payment. So the exporter of services will be paying some IGST for all the services that he has exported, services which has been rendered delivered out of India. Now on payment of the IGST, he can claim the IGST paid by way of a refund. So that can be fitted into this category, export of services with the payment. The next category, taxes paid on intrastate supply, which is subsequently held to be interstate supply and vice versa. Now, naturally, there might be some mistakes made the initial phases, that is after the implementation phase of GST during the period of July 2017, August, September. Many were not able to identify the recipient belongs to which state. So normally the GSTR 3B return doesn't require to feed in any GSTN, but the same GSTN is required to be filled at the time of filing GSTR 1. So earlier GSTR 3B was filed first and later on GSTR 1 was filed. So now there was an error committed in 3B. So people could have assumed that particular supply as an interstate supply, but the fact is it could be an intrastate supply. And also vice versa. The taxpayer could have assumed this to be an intrastate supply, but actually it was an interstate supply. So the error in identifying the nature of supply, which has already occurred during the initial phase. So the registered taxpayer could have paid the CGST, SGST tax, assuming it to be intrastate supply. But actually this supply is consequently held to be an interstate supply for which the IGST is supposed to be paid. Now the vice versa. A registered taxpayer who has paid the IGST tax, assuming it to be interstate transaction, but actually it was an intrastate where he should have paid CGST and SGST. Now what happens to the amount paid? If you have wrongly paid, the only provision available is that we have to pay again under the correct head. So if it is IGST, again IGST has to be paid, and the excess taxes paid under the head CGST and SGST can be claimed back as an refund. So now this head facilitates the taxpayer or any registered person to claim the erroneously paid taxes. Now we have a very advanced option after 2.5 years of GST. At presently, if we have paid any taxes under the wrong head, we also have a form, GST PMT 09 form. Filing of this form will help us to transfer the taxes between under one head to another head. So if you have paid under IGST, you can again transfer it properly to the CGST and SGST. You have paid it under CGST and SGST, you can again transfer it to the IGST. So a lot of major heads and minor heads are there. Hope you could have discussed in the previous sessions all the taxes, interest, late fees, penalties. So if you have paid under any wrong head, we have the facility to transfer it to the correct head, so that the cash paid by the registered person or the taxpayer will never go waste, or it will never left unutilized in the cash ledger. Now, the next category of refund is on account of refund by supplier of the deemed export. So already we have come across the recipient of the deemed export. Now the other category is the supplier of deemed export. So now if the supplier of deemed export has not collected the taxes from the recipient, and he himself has subsequently paid the tax amount to the government by way of an output tax, now the supplier of the deemed export would be eligible to claim the amount paid by him by way of a refund. But here you have to remember a point: the supplier also have to provide a declaration that the recipient is not going to claim the refund, or he will not claim, or he is not going to claim in future. So when the supplier claims the refund, he has to give a declaration that the recipient is not going to claim the refund. When the recipient files the refund, he has to give a declaration that the supplier is not going to claim the refund, since the law allows only either of the one person to claim the refund under these two categories. The next category is any other. We can call it as a residual category. Suppose if we feel that the category of refund cannot be included in any of the cases which we are discussing now, so it can be fitted under this category just by mentioning the amount of the refund in the portal. It can be of any reason which cannot be fitted into the above categories. The next category is the excess payment of taxes. So any taxpayer having GST registration can claim the refund when the taxpayer has paid some excess amount, like in the form of, it can be advance tax, it can be TDS, tax deducted, or tax collected, or self-assessment, even self-assessment tax. So something on taxes on regular assessment. So something which has been paid into the cash ledger in excess. Now the GST portal has been enabled with this kind of category of refund for the taxpayer, so that it helps them to claim the refund amount of cash which is in excess in cash ledger, which cannot be utilized. So sometimes I may be winding up my business, I don't want to continue anymore. In that case, my cash ledger has a huge amount of cash balances, taxes. So now I can claim the refund under this category, excess payment of taxes. The last category, on account of assessment, provisional assessment, appeal, or any other order. Now this is the category where any taxpayer, including the regular taxpayer, he can be a casual taxpayer or a non-resident taxpayer, or even unregistered person in whose favor an assessment or a provisional order or an appeal, we can call it appeal, or any other order entailing the refund has been issued, he may file the application for refund under this category. So it's a regular provision that usually we have to pay some percentage of the demand amount in advance before proceeding with any appeal cases. So 25% of the demand amount has to be paid first, then only we can file an appeal cases. And suppose later on, if the taxpayer has won the case, the order has been issued in favor of the taxpayer or registered person, what happens to the demand percentage? That is a portion of the demand which has been already paid. In such cases, if the taxpayer gets a favorable order, then which has resulted in no demand or no taxes or no penalty for the taxpayer, then he may be allowed to claim the refund under this particular category on account of assessment, provisional assessment, appeal, or any other order. Just by quoting the order number, he is allowed to file the refund applications. Now let us move on to the next slide. Now the time period for filing the refund application. Time plays a very crucial factor in GST. So either it can be filing of returns, or because every late filing of return attracts penalty, interest, everything. So for everything, the time period has to be considered. So even when we have to decide on a supply, the time period, the time of supply has to be considered. So before deciding whether this transaction falls in this particular month or it comes under next subsequent month. So time always plays a crucial factor. Now similarly for refund also, we have the cutoff date. So before expiry of 2 years from the relevant date, we have to file the refund application. Now, what is mean by the relevant date? This relevant date always differs for different category of exports. So, which I have listed below. In the case of goods exported out of India, where a refund has to be claimed on the taxes paid, or a refund has to be claimed on the inputs or input services used in such goods. Now, this point I'm talking about the accumulated ITC. I'm talking about the accumulated input tax credit. So if the goods are exported by sea or air, the relevant date is the date on which the ship or the aircraft in which such goods are loaded leaves India. So the date is the ship leaves India is the relevant date. So before the expiry of 2 years from this date, we need to file the refund application. Now, if it is by land, if the goods are exported by land, the relevant date is the date on which such goods pass the custom frontier. Passes the custom frontier. Within 2 years from this date, we have to file the refund claim. If the goods are exported by post, the relevant date is the date of dispatch of goods by the post office concerned connected to the place outside India. So within 2 years from this date, the refund form has to be of goods which are treated as deemed export. That is where a refund of taxes paid on those supplies are claimed. The relevant date is the date on which the returns relating to such deemed export are filed. So now the date of filing of return has to be considered for deemed export. In the case of services which are exported out of India, export of services, where a refund has to be claimed on the taxes paid, that is IGST paid, or a refund has to be claimed on the inputs or the input services used in such services. Now again, here I am talking about the accumulated ITC. There is no output tax is zero. Maybe I would have taken LUT, letter of undertaking, but on the other hand, I have a huge amount of the ITC accumulated, which are not utilized, which are not offset against my liability, still lying in my credit ledger. In those cases, the relevant date is the date of the receipt of the payment in convertible foreign exchange. Or sometimes if the receipt is in Indian rupee, wherever permitted by the RBI, Reserve Bank of India, then the date of receipt in Indian currency, not only foreign currency, the date of receipt in Indian currency also. But when the supply of service has been completed and thereafter only such payment is being received. Now the service is done and then the payment is received, the date of receipt of your foreign currency or your Indian currency, whichever is applicable. But in all other cases, the relevant date is the date of the issue of invoice, where the payment for the export of such services are received in advance prior to the date of the issue of the invoice. Like the work has not been done, the service has not been delivered, but I have received some amount by way of an advance. In those cases, the relevant date will be the date of the issue of invoices. Now the next criteria, assessment, appeal, or any other order. So now the relevant, when the tax becomes refundable as a consequence of any judgment, decree, or order, or the direction of the appellate authority, appellate tribunal, whoever it may be. It may be any person, appellate tribunal, or even the court, now which results in a favorable judgment to the taxpayer. Then the relevant date is the date of communication of such judgment to the taxpayer. The date of communicating the judgment to the taxpayer within 2 years from this date, the refund form has to be filed. The next one is the inverted duty structure, inverted tax structure. Now here again we have the unutilized input tax credit lying because my input tax rates are higher when compared to my output tax rate. So there are huge amount of ITC lying in my credit ledger. Now the relevant date is the due date of furnishing, the due date of filing the return under section 39 for the period in which such claim for the refund has arisen. Now again we are going to look back to the date of filing of return for claiming of the refund. The next one is the taxes paid. So in case any taxes has been paid and left unutilized in the cash ledger, it's not going to be offset against any liability, but still it has been paid by way of a tax and lying in cash ledger. The taxes may be paid on a provisional basis, as I said in the case of TDS, GST TDS, TCS, or even self-assessment taxes. The relevant date will be the date of adjustment of the tax after the final assessment. After the final assessment, within 2 years from the date of adjustment of tax, we need to file the refund claim. Other person, in the case of any other person who is going to file the refund form, who is going to claim the refund other than the supplier, the date of receipt of the goods or services or both, from that date, the date of receipt will be considered as the relevant date. The last, residuary case, any other case. In any other residuary cases, the date of the actual payment of taxes will be the relevant date for claiming the refund form. Now we'll be moving into the next slide, where we will be discussing about the refund forms which are involved. Now these are the sequence of forms which are involved in the process of filing the refund application. Now starting from the first form, GST RFD 1. Now this form is the application form which is going to be used for filing your refund claim. So this application form should be filed along with the different statements, undertakings, declaration, which are being given listed out in the subsequent slide. We'll discuss it later. And now this form has to be annexed, enclosed along with the various statements, declaration, undertaking, etc., which is relevant depending upon the criteria of the refund category. So since we have looked into several categories in the previous 2 slides, whichever category is applicable for us, the document also will be related to that category of refund. So in case of deemed export or cess unit, we cannot go and ask for a shipping bill, because shipping bill is only issued when the goods moved out of India. Now these 2 categories of refund are within India, so we may not be having shipping bill. So each and every category of refund differs, and the document related to each category alone should be attached or enclosed along with the refund application form. The next form is the GST RFD 2. So once when you file the GST RFD 1 form, you will be getting the ARN number, which we call it as the application reference number. This number will be generated only when the applicant has completed the entire process of filing the refund form and then submitting it. That is without leaving out or omitting out any attachments. Only when all the documents or supporting documents are being uploaded, it is being said that you have filed the RFD 1. So once when the successful filing of the RFD 1 is being completed, the acknowledgement is called as the RFD 02. The acknowledgement form will be generated for the complete filing, for the complete application set, if it is successfully accepted by the officer. So sometimes the officer may be having some queries. He may be seeking some furthermore clarification from the taxpayer. He needs some more document. The document may not be proper. Some could have been missed out. So the officer may require some additional document. In that cases, he may issue RFD 03 instead of RFD 02. If RFD 02 is generated, we can be satisfied. Okay, our refund claim has been accepted by the officer and it is going to be for further processing. But if the RFD 3 is being generated, we have to look upon the issue where the officer would be requiring some more additional information. So now either of the case, whether it is RFD 2 or RFD 3, within 15 days, RFD 2 or RFD 3 has to be issued from the date of filing of the application. So the time limit is only 15 days. So within 15 days, the officer has to either acknowledge by issuing RFD 2 or he has to issue a deficiency memo in the form of RFD 3. So either of the two has to be issued, communicated to the taxpayer. The date of the 15 days time period will be counted from the date of the ARN. So from that date onwards, the 15 days, within expiry of 15 days, this process has to be done. So once an acknowledgement has been issued in relation to the refund application, that is RFD2 has been issued, then later on or subsequently, no RFD3 or no deficiency memo on any ground can be issued by the officer, because the officer has already accepted, and again he cannot change his mind, but again he cannot issuing, he is not allowed to issue RFD3 again. So once the application has been submitted, and suppose if any deficiency memo has been issued, again the taxpayer has to clear all those queries raised by the officer, and then it is treated as a fresh application. So when you are resubmitting after responding to a deficiency memo, when you are resubmitting, that refund application will again have a different ARN number, not the first ARN one that is said to be invalid. Now again, this is treated as a fresh submission, and this will have a different ARN number. So now when the proper officer also, the officer should not serve another deficiency memo for the one for which he has already served deficiency memo. Only one is allowed to be served at one particular period. So unless if the deficiencies are pointed out or not rectified by the taxpayer, so the officer has asked for 5 points to be clarified, but the taxpayer has clarified only 4 points. The fifth point he has left it out, or fifth point he has no idea of what to submit. Then again, we're looking into this, the officer is allowed to issue deficiency memo. But once when the taxpayer has filed all the 5 clarifications, 5 queries, has responded to all the 5 queries properly or perfectly, then again the officer should not serve any deficiency memo. So now the rectified refund application which is submitted after the correction of all the deficiencies, for that also the time period of 2 years has to be computed. So remember, the relevant period of 2 years is not only for the first time application, but also after rectifying or after responding to a deficiency memo or any query. For that resubmission also, the time period of 2 years has to be taken and kept in mind. Next one is the RFD4, which is the provisional order issued. The provisional order is always issued only for 90% of the refund claim. So now, which means that the officer requests furthermore verification. Furthermore, approval or the balance amount will be sanctioned. The balance amount of 10% will be sanctioned only after further verification or further processing by the officer. So at present, he has sanctioned as 90% on a provisional basis. The next one is the RFD5. This is nothing but the payment advice. So the net amount of refund along with the interest. Suppose if there is any delay in sanctioning the refund, the maximum period for sanctioning a refund after filing of the refund claim by the taxpayer is only 60 days. So the officer should not delay beyond the period of 60 days. If there is any delay beyond the period of 60 days, for each day, interest will be calculated and then it will be added along with the refund amount. So now, in the case if the officer is issuing payment advice, he will issue the refund amount along with interest, if any. If it is within 60 days, no interest. But if it is taking beyond 60 days, the officer also will issue interest amount for the delayed number of days. So the officer will issue the RFD5 and the refund amount is credited to the taxpayer's bank account electronically. There is no manual interruption. There is no manual process. The amount will get transferred or get credited to our bank account immediately once when the officer has approved our claim. The next one is the RFD6, refund sanction order. So the GST officer, after proper processing or after going through the entire application, entire document submitted within 60 days, which is the time limit from the date of submitting the application, the amount of refund is admissible. If the amount of refund is found to be admissible, an order will be issued in RFD6, which is the final refund amount. The next one is the Form GST RFD07. This is the order for complete adjustment of the sanctioned refund or the order for withholding the refund. It can be for anything. If there is a complete sanction, RFD7 will be issued. If there is any withholding, RFD 7 is issued by the GST officer only in cases where the refund claimed by the applicant is completely adjusted against any outstanding demand. If the taxpayer has something to pay which has not been paid till date, the officer can adjust the refund amount against the pending dues by the taxpayer. The refund which is withheld due to any reason. So now this RFD 7 is a simple computation where amount of refund sanction minus amount of refund withheld equal to the amount of refund allowed to the taxpayer. The refund amount is, for example, if the refund amount is 100, the taxpayer has still dues of 20, which is not yet paid. The refund amount will be adjusted against rupees 100. So 100 minus 20 will be on the net amount of 80 rupee only will be credited to my bank account. The next form is RFD 08, which is the notice for rejection of the application for refund. So after appropriate processing, if the part or whole of the refund is inadmissible, if the officer finds that a particular portion of the refund amount is not eligible to be claimed by the taxpayer, then in that case, the officer will issue the 8 based on the rejection of the application. RFD 8 always RFD 8 also provides the reason for rejection, for why the refund is being rejected by the officer. Not only mere rejection, also the reason for rejection by the officer also should be intimated in GST RFD 8. So the notice after issuing RFD 8, anyway the taxpayer will be given an opportunity of being heard. The taxpayer is also to be allowed to explain his side, explain his views, why the refund should not be rejected. The notice seeking response from the taxpayer is also issued, requiring the taxpayer to respond for the rejection. So now the taxpayer has to provide the reason as to why the refund amount should not get rejected. And for providing this response has to be done within 15 days of the receipt of the RFD 8 notice. This is only the time period given to the taxpayer to respond why the refund amount should not be rejected. So RFD 9 is only the response. Any taxpayer receiving notice in RFD 8 has to reply in RFD 9, which is a response, and he may also attach some additional documents. So he may want to prove his side. He may want to he may want to clear it why the refund amount should not be rejected. So he may also provide upload some additional documents as requested by the officer along with the reply to the notice. When no refund is admissible, the GST officer directs the refund applicant to provide a reply in GST RFD 09, where the entire claim is being rejected, the reason, or a part amount is being rejected, the response from the taxpayer is to be taken from RFD 09. The next form is GST RFD 10, where there is a special form which is being given for claiming of refund by any specialized agency, or we may call it as embassies of the foreign currency. So it is only a special claim form for claiming of refund by international organization, embassies, or a specialized agency of United Nations organization, or multilateral financial institutions. These are the examples: embassies of foreign countries, foreign diplomatic missions. So these people are eligible to claim the refund of taxes paid on their inward procurement, paid on their purchase of goods or services for their official use. They may not be having any taxable supplies. Outward supply may not be taxable, but only they could have incurred some expenditure related to the inward supply, maybe an official expenditure or something. So now whatever be the ITC accumulated due to those inward procurement, RFD 10 form has to be filed by the registered taxpayer on the GST Common Portal within 6 months. Now again, remember there is a difference. So far we have seen the time period as 2 years. Now for specialized agencies, the time period given is only 6 months from the last day of the quarter in which the supply has been done, or in which the supply has been procured. The inward supply has taken place. So within 6 months from the end of the quarter, falling in the month in which the inward supply has been done, the refund claim has to be submitted. So it is not 2 years for specialized agency, it is only 6 months for these people. The next one, GST RFD 10A. Now again, this is also a specialized refund form, and this form is being given for canteen store department. So it is again an unit which is coming under the direct control of the central government. We can find that procurement, these people make supply only to the defense people, or these people make supply only to the unit run canteen stores. These are all the branches of the canteen. Only military people or defense people can buy products. So they supply products from A to Z. It can be provisions, groceries, anything. From pin to plane, everything will be supplied here. So, but these supplies are not taxable. It is exempted. So they should not collect any tax from their customers, from the defense people or military who are buying from them. So in that case, they may be having a huge amount of ITC accumulated in their credit ledger, because the procurement will be done from the normal manufacturers only. Of course, the manufacturers will be charging GST, since these people cannot be told that inward supply are also not taxable. Definitely their inward supplies are taxable, but outward supplies are exempted. So resulting, the credit ledger will be having a huge amount of the ITC. Now these people can claim the refund under this form, GST RFD 10A. Now there is also a special provision. There is an order under the state government that these people, the state government is allowing refund of 50% of the state taxes paid by the canteen store department on all their inward supply. So if my input tax credit lying in my credit ledger is rupees 100, for example, I am always allowed to claim the refund of only 50% of the inward supply. So which means only 50 rupees I am eligible to claim. So the balance 50 rupee has to be reversed by the canteen store department. So there is a special order, special notification given for these particular specialized kind of people. The next claim is the GST RFD 10B. Again, this is also for a special refund claim by a specialized agency. Now, we may be having a lot of duty-free shops which are located at the departure area of our international terminal airports. Now they sell the locally procured goods. Of course, they could have paid the input taxes, but their outward supplies are exempted. So this happens on the condition that the products are sold to foreign tourists who visit India. So while returning, it is assumed that they will take the goods, they will purchase the goods and take it outside India. So since taxes are exempt, international passengers would buy from the duty-free shops located in the airport lounge or airport terminals. So in those, as a result, because of these, the credit get accumulated in their credit ledger due to the inward supplies are taxable supply. So while they can encash it by way of the refund, the only way is that they can encash it by way of the refund. Accumulated credit can be encashed. The next form is form GST RFD 11. So now this form already we have discussed at the starting of our session. I told RFD 11 is nothing but LUT. It's called as a bond or a letter of undertaking. So whenever a person is going to export the goods or services, first he has to furnish the letter of undertaking on the common portal. The process is also very simple, and then only they are allowed to make the exports without payment of IGST. Suppose if I have not availed the LUT, and if I am doing my export, I have made some export orders and I'm going to bill it, then the taxpayer is required to pay IGST at the time of filing the GST return. So to avoid the payment of IGST, LUT can be furnished. When to apply is just before making the export orders, you can apply for LUT. The LUT is not related to each and every export. There is only one LUT which is required to be taken for a financial year. So one LUT at the start of the financial year can be taken and it can be utilized throughout the entire year. In the next financial year, you just have to make a renewal, or you just have to again fresh a new LUT for the next financial year. The process is very simple. As I told you, it will be asking only for the two name and address of two witness, the two people who are related to your business, and immediately on submission, you will be getting the ARN number. So now the next slide which we are going to discuss is the refund of taxes paid on the export of goods with the payment of taxes. So far, if you go back and check, I have not included this category anywhere. Refund of taxes paid on exports of goods with the payment of taxes. See, I have not included anywhere. It is only without payment of taxes. The reason is that this category of refund comes as a separate category. This is called as an automatic refund, automated refund from the customs portal, from the IceGate portal where the exports and imports are being governed. This refund comes automatically from the customs portal. Now, the logic behind this category is that the supplier has not taken LUT, so he has not applied for LUT. So whenever he has made any exports, he has paid IGST at the time of filing of the GST return, which is nothing but the GSTR 3B. So the supplier has paid the IGST amount. And also the one point which he has to notice that while filing the shipping bill, the supplier, the exporter has to definitely include the IGST amount that he is going to pay in the shipping bill. The amount which he is going to pay through the GST return should be included in at the time of filing the shipping bill itself. So now if you have filed the shipping bill by stating that the IGST is 0 and in the GST return you have paid the IGST amount of 1 lakh rupee or 2 lakh rupee, there is no chance of getting the refund because all these are digital matching. Whatever is being included in the shipping bill will be compared by the system along with the GST return filed by the exporter. So both has to get matched. If there is any single mismatch also, there will be difficulty in getting the refund claim. So where we have to declare this paid amount in our 3B return, it is very simple. Like you always declare it in the zero rated supply column, row number 3.1B of the GSTR 3B, which I have mentioned here. In that row, we always declare the export amount, zero rated supply value along with the IGST portal. After filing of the 3B return, and also simultaneously you have to file your GSTR 1 return also. So table 6A of your GSTR 1 return, which talks about the export supply, both has to be filed with the same valid data. In 3B you cannot give a different figure and in 1 you cannot give a different figure. So both has to be matched perfectly. When these two returns are filed, the GST portal will transmit the data to the IceGate portal. Now this is the customs portal. IceGate portal is nothing but the customs portal. The customs portal, the payment and the shipping bill data and the data given in the returns will get verified. So once when they are matched with each other, the custom department will provide you an automatic refund, and this happens within a week, within 7 working days. This is the very quickest form of availing the refund. When each and every figure and data is being matched perfectly, there is no delay in sanctioning the refund. But if there is any mismatches, if there is any errors committed, then definitely there's a huge amount of delay in getting the refund back. Now, these are all the few error codes which the IceGate portal will list out. So in case if you check why your refund has not been credited so far, almost 1 month has been done. You have filed your 3B, filed your 1, shipping bill also filed perfectly. But why there is a delay in getting the refund? When you check, you could have been listed with any of these errors, starting from SB000 to SB006. Now, what are all these errors? Why the IceGate portal list out these errors? Because of these errors only, a refund process is getting delayed or it is being stuck somewhere. The IGST amount pay is being stuck somewhere else. Now, what is the reason? SB000 stands for successfully validated. There is no issue at all. You can ensure yourself that the refund will be granted perfectly. SB001, what is it? It is invalid SB detail. So there is some mismatch of data between the GSTR1 and the shipping bill filed by the exporter. These kinds of errors can be rectified only by making an amendment in the GSTR1 return through table 6A. So you have already filed the GSTR1 giving some wrong data. Is there any possibility for revision? No. In GST scenario, we don't have any revision at all. Only thing is that in the next subsequent month, we can make an amendment return amendment data to the previously submitted one. So in that case, the invalid shipping bill details has to be corrected by way of making amendment in the subsequent month. What is SB002? EGM not filed. So sometimes if the EGM may be filed manually, there might be some time lag between the EGM data being generated and the shipping bill data being generated. So now the exporter has to only approach the shipping line or the carrier who has made arrangement for making export of these taxable person. So he has to approach the shipping line to file the EGM immediately or electronically so that he can check the status. What is the status of the export general manifesto? Now GSTIN mismatch. What is a GSTIN mismatch? SB003. So any amendment, only amendment can be made in the subsequent month return to correct the data, to correct the GSTN which has been erroneously filed. What is SB004? So now record already received and validated. So there may be some duplicate or repeated transmission of invoices by the GSTN resulting in these type of errors, SB004. The previous transmission would have already been validated, but still again without knowing that you are processing for the, you are giving the transaction for the second time process. In those cases, the status will be reflected as record already received and validated. So now you are giving a duplicate entry which has to be avoided. What is SB005? Invoice number given in the shipping bill might differ from the one which is given at the time of filing the GSTR1. There might be wrong invoice number. See, in a hurry, in the case of for the purpose of filing the shipping bill, the exporter could have given the invoice number as 001. Okay, shipping bill filed. Now, at the time of filing GST return, erroneously the exporter could have given one alone, leaving out prefix, 2 zeros will be left out. Those cases also the error will be thrown out because these are all entirely dealt with digital matching. Entirely dealt with digital matching. Being human, we can understand. There is no difference between 1 and 001. Being human, we can understand. But how does the system understand? How does the computer understand? It will only validate through digital process only. So it will check for first 2 digits, 00. Now here it is absent. Yes, okay, it is not valid. It will throw out an error. So again, the only solution is that we have to amend the table 6A data which has been already filed through the amendment table 9A in the subsequent month GSTR1 return. Only through amendment the wrongly filed data can be corrected. So the typo error or the clerical error made by the person, it can be corrected only in the subsequent amendment return. Invalid invoice number is what we are discussing now, and SB006 gateway EGM not available. Now again, this is the reason of the delay made by the shipping company. So the shipper who has filed your shipping bill has committed some errors, or this error can be rectified only in coordination with your shipping company, the shipper, which means that the EGM data, Export General Manifesto, has not been filed electronically. So there is a manual interruption resulting in delay in generation of data between the EGM and the shipping bill. In that case also, we need to rush up, we need to coordinate with our shipper so that the EGM will be generated electronically and the data will match with the shipping bill, which will further allow us to claim the refund automatically. Now these are all the error codes generated under the customs portal. Now we'll move into our next slide. Our next slide, from this slide onwards, we'll be talking about the documents that are required to be submitted or attached along with each category of the refund. So the heads we have already discussed in the first 2 slides. Now in detail, we are going to discuss about the documentary attachments that has to be submitted along with the RFD1 form. So the first category is the refund of ITC on export of goods and services without payment of taxes. What has to be uploaded in the portal? The declaration. What is the declaration under 54.3? It is nothing but the applicant should declare by stating that the export that he has done, either it can be goods or services, they are not subject to export duty. He has to give a declaration. Or no duty drawback has been availed or even availed at a lower rate for these exports. So two conditions are not being met by him, and also no refund of the IGST is claimed by him so far. So far he has not claimed any refund of the amount. The refund of the ITC which he is going to be which is going to be claimed by him does not include the input tax credit pertaining to the nil rated or exempted supply. So we must always ensure that the refund is always eligible only for taxable and zero rated. Now, in this scenario, there is no difference between the taxable and zero rated, because the same zero rated supply, when you make within Indian boundaries, we are going to collect taxes and pay taxes. Only when it is out of India, it is defined as zero rated. So, taxable and zero rated always mean the same. So, input tax credit is always allowed and available pertaining to the supplies of taxable and zero rated. So, if for exempted and nil rated goods, you are not allowed to claim the refund. So, out of 10 lakh, for example, 10 lakh turnover I have made, out of 10 lakh, 3 lakh rupees my exempted turnover, any exempted products, and balance 7 lakh rupees alone my taxable supply. Those cases, I have to claim the refund amount of 1 lakh rupee. So the 1 lakh rupee will be proportionately split up between the taxable and the exempted portion. So I only 30% is ineligible, 70% of my ITC is only eligible to be claimed as a refund. So out of 1 lakh rupee in total, I may be claiming only 70,000 because the balance 30,000 pertaining to the exempted supply is considered as an ineligible refund claim. So this is the declaration which he needs to submit in 54 subsection 3 of the CGST Act. Also, very important declaration, he has to declare that the incidence of taxes, interest or any other amount which is claimed as a refund has not been passed on to any other person. What is the meaning of has not been passed on? Now, the person should not have collected tax from his recipient. The moment when he collects tax from his recipient, it means that he has passed on the tax incidence to the next person. So being GST, the destination based tax, it always the supply chain, when the supply chain passes, the GST taxes also gets passed on from the manufacturer to the wholesaler, from the wholesaler to the retailer, from the retailer to the end consumer, end customer. So always the end customer is the person who is bearing the tax portion, being the destination based tax. Now here the similar concept, when you have collected taxes from your subsequent buyer, you are not eligible to claim the refund because you have already passed on the tax incidence to some other person. So in this case, you have to declare or you have to give an undertaking to the department that you have not passed on the tax incidence to the person. So the undertaking also should be given to the government that the amount of refund sanction will always be paid back along with interest if it is found that subsequently if it is found that the requirement of section 16(2)(c) and section 42 is not satisfied. Okay, what is section 16(2)(c)? Why it has to be satisfied? 16(2)(c) is input tax credit in respect of the supply is available to the recipient only if the tax charged on those supplies has actually been paid to the government, has actually been deposited to the government by the supplier. Your supplier could have collected tax from you, but he fails to furnish his return, fail to pay the taxes. Can you claim your input tax credit? Definitely no. The rule says no. Only when your taxes collected from you are being promptly paid by the supplier to the government and the supplier has to file the return, then only you are eligible to claim the input tax credit. Only when the revenue is being put into the government's hand, then only you are eligible to claim it back. When the supplier retains the tax by himself, then where is the source? What is the reason of claiming the refund from the government? The government will not have any money. Only when the money is being deposited in the government, we will be having the revenue claim, refund claim. So now we have to ensure that section 2C, subsection 2, subclause C, the conditions are being satisfied to claim the refund. What is section 42 and 2, subsection 2? Section 42 talks about the claim of input tax credit in respect to the invoices, or it can be a debit note relating to the inward supply, should always match with the corresponding outward supply of the supplier. Now here comes the matching mechanism. Here comes the matching mechanism between the supplier and the recipient. The recipient cannot claim refund or cannot even take the input tax credit of the paid taxes unless those taxes are paid by the supplier and filed in the GSTR1 return. So there is always a matching mechanism, invoice matching mechanism. You could have declared that you have paid ITC or you have ITC value of 1 lakh rupee, but your supplier has paid output tax to the value of only 90,000. What happens to the balance 10,000? So there is a mismatch in value. Those cases, you're always eligible to claim only to the extent of the taxes paid by the supplier, which means only up to 90,000 rupee you're eligible to claim. So this is the invoice matching mechanism, which is defined under section 42. Now these two conditions, these two sections has to be satisfied. Now we'll move into the statement 3 under rule 89 2b. So what is 89 2b and 89 2c? So in the subsequent slide, have done the statement. This is nothing but the Excel form. This is nothing but the Excel template which is required to be filled by the taxpayer along with the refund application. Now what are the details required under this Excel? See, now I have the serial number, invoice details, invoice number, date and value. Now these are all the invoice which are raised by the exporter. Either it can be export of services or it can be export of goods. The invoice details are required to be given here. And also you have to select whether it pertains to goods or services, G or S. Now again, shipping bill, the port code. When you take the shipping bill, you can find the port code. That is the port from where the shipping has been done. So the port code has to be entered. Shipping bill number. But remember, the points 6, 7 and 8 will be applicable only when it is export of goods. If it is export of services, we may not be having this. So it can be left out. So when it is export of goods, shipping bill port code, shipping bill number, date has to be given. And EGM detail. What is EGM? As I told you, it is Export General Manifesto, and this is a legal requirement which has to be filed by the shipping carrier once when the ship or the cargo moves out of India or the Indian territorial borders. So the shipping carrier files with the customs the details of all the shipment that are moving out of the country based on the detail provided in the shipping bill. So this is a valid document which has to be filed by the shipping agent. So after proper filing, you will be getting the EGM number and the date. The automatic generation of EGM number and date will happen. So the EGM number has to be reported here. So this is to ensure or keep track that this is a proper export. Goods have really moved out of country. There is no any fraudulent activity being committed here. So all these has to be ensured. Shipping bill and EGM details has to be given. Suppose I am not dealing with goods, I am only dealing with services. Then you can leave out 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You just ignore it. You go to the last two columns, BRC number, bank remittance certificate, or FIRC, foreign inward remittance certificate. So this is a certificate which will be issued by the bank for each of your currency remittance, for each of your inward remittance. Say for example, every month I will be having $10,000 into my credited into my bank account, being the payment for my export of services. I'm sitting here and consulting software company. I'm consulting for a person who is located abroad. So every month I'm getting $10,000 as a payment. Whenever there is a credit of $10,000 in my account, the bank is supposed to issue the BRC certificate. So the certificate number and the date of the BRC has to be given here, has to be filled in. So after proper filling, this Excel has to be validated and uploaded along with the RFD1. So coming to the supporting documents. What are all the supporting documents you have to attach? See, we have BRC, FIRC in case of export of services, and shipping bill. Remember, these are required to be, shipping bill is required to be uploaded only in case of exports made through non-EDI ports. What is mean by non-EDI ports? These are all ports which do not come into the electronic processing. So still they are operating manually. They are not connected with each other. Still they are operating manually. In those cases, the data filed in shipping bill will not be sufficient for the proper officer to check for the accuracy. So he may be requiring you, or he may be asking you to upload the BRC certificate or the shipping bill for all those. But once when you give the details here, no officer will ask for the copy of the shipping bill or the BRC certificate. Only if it is required, or if there is any ambiguity for the officer to get it clarified, he may request you to submit the copy. Copy of GSTR 2A of the relevant period. So by this time you could have known what is GSTR 2A. GSTR 2A is nothing but all your inward supply which are auto-populated. Like your GSTR 1 and 3B, which you have GSTR 2A is a return. We cannot call it as a return. It is an auto-populated figures which can be viewed. The inward, all the procurement done can be viewed in GSTR 2A. The GSTR 2A for the relevant period, that is the period for which you are going to claim the refund, has to be downloaded from the portal and then uploaded along with the RFD1 form. This is done to ensure that you are claiming the refund only for the ITC, only for the input tax credit, which are accumulated, which are being reflected in your GSTR 2A. Reflected in GSTR 2A which means that your supplier has actually filed the return. So as I told you, only when your supplier files the return as per section 16 and section 42, you are allowed to claim the refund. So this is the checkpoint. You can ensure that these are all invoice data which are being properly filed by your supplier. So after proper filing by the supplier, you are allowed to claim the refund. Statement of invoices, Annexure B. Now this is nothing but again a statement of all your invoice details, like the person to whom, the name of the supplier to whom you are going to supply, you have supplied, the value of the goods supplied, or anything, any data pertaining to the invoice has to be given in the annexure. Self-certified copies of the invoices entered in Annexure B whose details are not found in 2A. So sometimes there might be some mistake committed by the supplier. So there might be 10 invoices, 10 procurement made by you, but the supplier mistakenly has left out one particular invoice, has declared all the other 9 invoices. So one particular invoice alone is not being filed by the supplier. So since because the mistake is made by the supplier, since because he has not filed the return properly, you are denied the credit. You are denied the credit of claiming the refund amount pertaining to that particular invoice. So in those cases, what you can do? The mistake is committed by the supplier. Can you just leave it like that? No. Since because you have paid the taxes to the supplier, you also can prove yourself by uploading the self-certified copies of that particular invoice which are not reflected in 2A. So it is not in 2A. So that particular invoice alone, I am attaching a copy separately. You're just intimating, giving an intimation to the officer that I have paid the taxes. It is a mistake of the supplier of not filing the return. So now you can upload the self-certified copies. Now next comes the computation, refund computation. So what is your refund amount under this category? Export turnover. This is a formula, a very simple formula. Export turnover divided by the adjusted turnover multiplied by the net input tax. So what does mean by the net input tax? Net input tax credit is nothing but the input tax credit availed on the inputs or the input services during the relevant period, that is for which the refund, the period for which the refund application is being filed on. Say for example, I am filing the refund application from April to September, 6 months. So the ITC accumulated during April to September. The system will not take the ITC prior to April or after September. Only in between the period which you have specified in your application form, April to September alone will be considered. That at ITC alone will be considered. That is called as the net ITC pertaining to the relevant period. What is export turnover? Yes, whatever turnover which is pertaining to my exports. It can be export of goods or export of services. What is adjusted total turnover? Adjusted turnover is nothing but the total turnover excluding the value of exempted supply, excluding the value of exempted supply. As I have already mentioned while discussing in the previous slide, I told you refund is always not eligible for exempted supply. It is always only eligible for taxable and zero rated. So now here I am eliminating my exempted turnover. So from the total turnover, you have to eliminate the exempted turnover, resulting the equal to the term which is called after eliminating the exempted is the adjusted turnover. So in proportionate to your export adjusted turnover multiplied by the net ITC, whatever figure you are arriving, that is the maximum permissible refund under this particular head. Yes, there is a maximum permissible refund under this particular head. So I have already discussed this Excel statement with you, statement 89.2b and 89.2c. And now we'll move into the next category, refund of taxes paid on export of services. So again, coming back to the declaration point. So this declaration is a mandatory for all category of refund. You should intimate the officer, you should intimate the department that you have not, the goods are not subject to any export duty. You are not going to avail any duty drawback for the export refund claims, and the ITC which you are going to claim as a refund is not pertaining to the ITC of exempted turnover or the exempted supply. So again, the eligible criteria, section 16.2c and section 42.2 has to be satisfied. Section 16 talks about the eligibility category for claiming the refund, claiming the input tax credit, and section 42 talks about the matching mechanism of the invoices. Whatever you have claimed as a input tax credit should always be reflected in your 2A, which means that only when the transaction has been declared by the supplier in his GSTR 1 return, and on the other hand it will be auto-populated in GSTR 2A of the recipient, then the recipient is eligible to claim the refund, where the tax, all the taxes due are properly paid by the supplier. There is no duplication of the credit. There is a matching mechanism. Statement 2 under 89 and 2C. So what is mean by 89 and 2C? So again, this is an Excel statement which I have given here. So export of services with payment of taxes. Now again, you are going to give the serial number, invoice wise details. Now we are going to fill in the invoice number, date of the invoice, invoice value. Invoice value. Now, this should be in Indian rupees. Maybe you could have received in foreign currencies, but multiplied by the currency rate on the exchange rate on that particular day on which you are raising the invoice, the value should be declared in Indian rupees. The IGST paid on the value, the taxable value, and then the amount of IGST paid. Say for example, I have 1 lakh worth of supply value and the IGST paid is 18% on 1 lakh. So 18,000 is the IGST amount, 1 lakh is the taxable value. How about my invoice value? That should be 1 lakh and 18,000. BRC and FARC number. Since this pertains to the export of services, you will not be having any shipping details. You will be having only remittance certificate details. The IGST involved in debit note effect. So debit note and credit note effect also should be considered. See, you might have raised an invoice and subsequently after 1 month there could be any debit note or credit note raised pertaining to those invoices. So always only the net effect should be declared. So again, after giving the invoice detail, you have to give the debit note and the credit note details also. So the net integrated tax, the net IGST paid after giving due adjustment to column number 9 and 10, that is the debit note entries and the credit note entries, the net effect alone should be given in column number 11, which is the IGST paid. So after uploading this Excel statement along with the RFD1, you also have to attach some other additional documents. What are those? Self-certified copies of the invoices entered in Annexure A whose details are not found in 2A. So because of the mistake made by the supplier, there is no auto-populated item in your 2A, and because of not populated in 2A, it doesn't mean that the credit is going to be getting denied. So now again, you can upload the self-certified copies and just prove yourself there is no mistake from your side. The BRC or FARC certificates. So if anything required by the officer, now for all the officer will not ask for all the BRC FARC certificates. If there is any ambiguity or if there is any furthermore clarification to be required by the officer, then he may ask you for the BRC or FARC copies of all the sales proceeds that you have received for export of services. Copy of GSTR 2A. This is a prima facie evidence. Always the GSTR 2A act as a prima facie evidence in granting the refund. So the 2A can be downloaded from the portal and uploaded as a PDF document. Statement of invoices. Now this statement is nothing but the details of all your invoices made. All the details which are pertaining to your invoices, these supplier, recipient name, value of the supply, date of supply, invoice number, everything has to be filled in. Self-declaration regarding the non-prosecution under sub-rule 1 of rule 91. This is a very important rule. Now what this rule 91 talks about is that the person claiming the refund during any period of 5 years immediately preceding the tax period for which the refund is being claimed, he has not been prosecuted for any offense. He has not been prosecuted for any offense under this act or under an existing law, and the amount of tax evaded has not exceeded rupees 250 lakh rupee. 250 lakh rupees. So this is a self-declaration which has to be given by the taxpayer that he has not been prosecuted. If prosecuted also, the amount of tax evaded has not exceeded rupees 2 lakh and 50,000 rupees. Now, after attaching all those documents, the RFD1 form can be submitted successfully into the portal. Now, the next category, the refund on account of supplies to cess unit
பஸ்ராஜ் இப்போ உங்க
without
சிஸ்டத்துல
payment of
என்னோட ஃபேஸ் வந்து
taxes.
இதாகுதுன்னு
So, the
பாருங்க.
same supplies to cess unit
பஸ்ராஜ் இப்போ உங்க
without
சிஸ்டத்துல
payment
என்னோட
of
ஃபேஸ் வந்து
taxes.
இதாகுதுன்னு
So, the
பாருங்க.
same declaration which you have discussed, section 54.3 applies
இப்போ
here.
இப்போ நம்மளுக்கு
Statement 892D
சிஸ்டர்
and
ஃபேஸ் மட்டும்
892E.
கிளியரா
So,
இருக்கு.
this is also an Excel statement which I have given here. You can see the refund on account of
Clear.
supply made to cess unit without payment. What are all the details required? Again, serial number, asking for the invoice details. Invoice details are common in all the categories of the refund because without comparing with the supply invoices, no person will grant us the refund. This is only the major source of evidence proving that the supply has been properly done. So the invoice details, invoice number, date, and then the value. Either it can be goods or services. So cess unit supplier can also supply goods. Equivalently, he also can supply services. And then the shipping bill details.
Excuse me.
Yes, ma'am.
Have a break for 10 minutes now.
Yes, ma'am. Sure. So I'll stop it here.
Yeah, ma'am.
Okay.
The problem in YouTube, so the screen it's not changing, it seems, ma'am. So we'll have a break now. By that time, we'll sort out that, ma'am.
Yeah, sure, ma'am. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
No audio, ma'am.
Okay. Can you see me?
Good afternoon, madam. Hello, madam. Geeta Kumar, madam.
Ravi Kumar?
Madam, chairperson, SARC.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, madam.
Good
Jagadish.
afternoon, sir.
Jagadish.
Yeah. Namaste. Good afternoon.
Okay, namaste, madam.
Yeah. Am I audible, sir?
Yes, ma'am. Audible.
Yeah, sir.
Ravi
Thank
Kumar,
you.
sir.
Thank you.
Good evening, sir. Good evening.
Okay, good evening, sir.
Can you able to hear me, sir? Audible?
Yes, sir. Audible, sir.
Yeah. Thank you.
MD, madam. Tanabaki, madam. Professor and Dean, Department of Commerce.
Vanakkam.
Vanakkam, madam.
Tanabaki.
Nice meeting you. Nice meeting you. Madam, நீங்க unmute பண்ணிக்கோங்க.
வணக்கம் மேடம்.
வணக்கம். ரொம்ப
சார் ரவிக்குமார் சார், குட் ஆஃப்டர்நூன்.
Good afternoon, ma. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
இந்த ஸ்டூடண்ட்ஸ் என்னென்ன கிளாஸ்ல இருக்காங்க?
MCom,
ஆஹா.
MPhil.
Okay, wonderful.
50% of students are postgraduate.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Then YouTube link also connected, madam.
Okay. For other commerce students.
Yeah.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. We can start, ma'am.
Yes. So we have been taking a break here. So 89.2D and 89.2E, the statement which we need to submit it, which we need to upload it. And as I told you again, this is asking information only about the invoice details, like the invoice number, date and value, and the sales unit supplier also can equivalently supply goods and also for services. So you need to select the category, whether it is for goods or for services, and then we will not be having any shipping bill, because this is not an export. This is only deemed to be an export. So it's only sales unit supply. So we will be having only the endorsed invoice number. This is the main document which is required to be submitted by the taxpayer claiming the refund. So the invoice copy has to be endorsed by the special economic zone officer. So he has to endorse it by affixing his signature and seal. Only when this document is being, the document details are being uploaded here, this is qualified as a proper sales unit supply. So now the statement has to be uploaded, and again statement 5A under 89.4. Statement 5A is nothing but the computation, the refund computation, which I have listed out here below. So this is also again the formula which we are going to use it for computing the maximum refund. The turnover of the zero-rated supplies of goods or services divided by the adjusted total turnover multiplied by the net input tax credit. As I already told you, net input tax credit is nothing but the input tax credit which has been accumulated and which is pertaining to that particular period for which the refund is going to be applied. Say for example, I am going to claim the refund from April to September, then the ITC accumulated only from April to September will be filtered up and it will be placed here.
online
The
classes.
system is not going to take up the amount prior to April and after September. It's only the cut-off period. From period and to period, if you mention it, only the ITC accumulated during this period will be called as the net input tax credit. The turnover of zero rated supply, as I told you, whatever be the supply value that you have done to the cess unit will be called as the turnover of zero rated.
To have a control and
Adjusted total turnover is nothing but the total turnover after any exempted turnover is not eligible for claiming the refund. So it is only the turnover after excluding your exempted turnover, which is called as the adjusted turnover, will be put into here. Turnover of, here I have given an example, turnover of zero rated goods or services amounting to rupees 2 lakh. Total turnover rupees 3 lakh. Exempted turnover rupees 50,000 and the adjusted total turnover, that is from the total turnover I have excluded the exempted turnover. So 3 lakh minus 50,000 will give you the net amount of 2,50,000 rupee. So this 2,50,000 is called as the adjusted total turnover. The net ITC is 45,000. So let us assume I have claimed the refund for the period April to September. So the ITC pertaining to April to September is only 45,000. So that is called as the net ITC. Now when you apply these figures into the formula which is mentioned above, 2 lakh, that is the turnover of zero rated, divided by adjusted total turnover 2,50,000 multiplied by the net ITC 45,000, the resultant is only 36,000. So out of 45,000 ITC, I am only eligible to claim the refund of 36,000. But what happens to the balance? What happens to the balance 9,000 rupee? That 9,000 rupee is nothing but the ITC pertaining to your exempted turnover, which is not eligible to be claimed as a refund. Check back again, you need to give a declaration under 89(2)(f). So what is this declaration under 89(2)(f)? This declaration to the effect that the cess unit, the person who is located in the cess unit has not availed the input tax credit of the taxes which are paid by the supplier. Since because the supplier is now going to claim the refund, the recipient, the person who is located in the cess unit, has not availed the input tax credit. Suppose if he have availed the input tax credit, it means that the supplier has passed on the tax incidence. So again, the declaration under 54(3) will not get satisfied. So again, now this becomes an ineligible refund. So before, we have to always ensure that the recipient, the cess unit, person located in the cess unit, has not availed the taxes as the input tax credit, whether it can be on supply of services or it can be on supply of goods.
Ma'am?
Yes, ma'am.
5 minutes.
Ma'am, can you represent your slide?
Right.
Yes, 1 second.
Okay. Students are also yet to join us.
Madam?
Students also will be joining now.
Yeah.
They are joining.
Reason, sir, one thing.
Ma'am,
Invitation
is it visible
link
now?
கொடுக்கணும் இல்லையா?
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
For
ma'am.
public.
You can start, ma'am.
Both Google Meet link as well as
ஆமா, அது it's not opening
So
a
now the declaration to
YouTube
the
link.
effect under section 89(2)(f) has
Not
to be
at opening,
given. It
அப்படின்னு
states
சொல்லி
that the refund on account of supplies
members
of
அங்க online ல
goods
பார்த்துட்டு
or
இருக்காங்க,
services
நான்
made to a
separate
cess
பண்ணதுல.
unit or a cess
Okay,
developer,
okay. I
and
will
the
send
recipient has not
இப்போ
claimed the
latest link இருந்தா
paid
send
amount
பண்ணுங்க,
as
I
the
will
input tax
okay.
credit. So the declaration
Clarity.
has to be given.
Okay.
And again, coming back to the undertaking under section 16
latest
and
YouTube
42,
link.
hope we have discussed 2 times. In the earlier previous 2 slides, we have discussed this point, section 16 and section 42. Now again, the self-declaration under section 89(2)(l). What is the declaration under 89(2)(l)? 89(2)(l) is nothing but a self-declaration with respect to tax, interest, or any other amount for the period from and to for which I am going to claim the refund. The incidence of the tax and the interest has not been passed on to any other person. So this is the self-declaration given under 89 2L. Suppose the refund amount exceeds 2 lakh rupee, then self-declaration is not satisfied. Self-declaration alone is not satisfied. Instead of self-declaration, a certificate has to be obtained from a chartered accountant or a cost accountant, a qualified chartered accountant or a cost accountant, as per Rule 89 2M. As per Rule 89 2M. So remember, if it is below 2 lakh, self-declaration is sufficient. If the refund claim is exceeding 2 lakh rupee, self-declaration is not sufficient. In that case, you have to go for a certificate from a chartered accountant or a cost accountant, and this is as per Rule 89 2M. Coming to the supporting documents, statement of invoices. Yes, again, Annexure B is nothing but the invoice details of all the supplies of goods or services. Whatever the content of the invoices, you have to just again reproduce it here in Annexure B. Self-certified copies of details which are not found in GSTR 2A. Yes, so the supplier made a mistake, so the transaction, the invoice has not been reflected in my 2A. In that case, I need to attach a self-certified copy. Endorsement from the specified officer of the cess. This is the most important thing. As I told you, the endorsement as per 89 Rule 89.1. What does that say? If it is goods, then that supply should be admitted in full in the cess unit. The supply is only for authorized operations as the endorsement done by the specified officer of the particular zone. Suppose if it is for services, then this supply is for only authorized operation, and evidence regarding the receipt of services for authorized operation are endorsed by the specified officer. So if it is for supply of goods or services, it doesn't matter. But only thing is that the invoice has to be endorsed. Endorsement in the sense, just the cess officer has to affix his seal and signature that these supplies are only for authorized operations. So this is the proof to ensure that the supplies are done to cess unit. The last one is a copy of the GSTR 2A. Yes, of course, for all the refund category, we always have to upload the downloaded GSTR 2A in the PDF format.
Good evening.
So now these are all the supporting documents for claiming refund by the cess
Good evening,
unit
sir.
Please
supplier.
start.
So we'll move into the next category, refund on account of supply to cess with payment. So now the previous slide we have discussed without payment, and this slide we are going to discuss with the payment. So again, the declaration under 54.3, goods are not subject to duty drawback. The declaration has to be given, and declaration under 89.2F, the declaration which we have also seen in the previous slide, that
Good evening to one and all present in
cess
this
unit
online
has not
platform.
collected any. The supplier of cess
Most
has not
dignified
collected any
and Honorable
taxes
Vice
from the
Chancellor of
cess
Bharathiar
unit.
University,
And
Dr.
statement
P.
4 under
Kalidas, sir,
89.2D
Head of the
and
Department
2E,
of
that also
Commerce,
we have seen in our previous
resource
slide. This
persons
is the
of today's
statement
session,
89.2D
CA Geeta
and 2E.
Kumar,
Since both the
Chairperson,
categories of
and
refunds
CA
are
Ravi
pertaining
Kumar,
to cess,
Chairman,
we have the
Career
same
Counseling
Excel, we
Committee,
have the same rule,
Sengai
same statement 5,
SIRC
which is
of
applicable
ICAI,
for both the categories.
organizer of this event, Dr. M.
Undertaking under
Jagadishwaran,
section 16.2C
Assistant
and
Professor,
42 is
Department
of
of
course
Commerce,
the credit
who
matching
had already
mechanism and the
conducted
payment
many
of
programs
taxes.
for the
Refund
career
can be claimed
advancement
as
of
an
the
input
students. I also
only when
welcome
the
all the
supplier has paid the
participants
taxes.
attending
Otherwise,
this
we are not
program.
eligible to claim.
Today, we mark our
Self-declaration under
presence
89
for the
2L.
online
This is
career
what I said.
counseling
When the
program
refund claim does not
about
exceed 2
chartered
lakh rupee,
accountancy
self-declaration is
organized by
sufficient.
Department of Commerce,
But if the
Bharathiar
refund amount
University.
is more than 2
The
lakh rupee,
capacity to learn is a
certificate is
gift.
required to be obtained
The
from a
ability
chartered
to learn
accountant
is
or
a
a
skill,
cost
and the
accountant
willingness to
under
learn
section
is a
89
choice.
2M.
Your
Now coming
learning
to the
curve is always
supporting
essential for growth.
documents.
I strongly believe
Ma'am, I
that
think
if
there
you
is
pay
some disturbance
attention,
in the
you can
background,
learn
ma'am.
something new
Yes,
every
ma'am.
day, and a good
From my
investment
side,
in knowledge
I don't know, ma'am, but
always pay
for us
better
it is clear
interest.
only. Participants are saying that
As
some
we all
disturbance are
aware
there.
that chartered accountancy
okay.
is one of
Just
the
a second.
most
Dear
demanding
participants,
and promising career
please refresh
options
your page
for
or
every student. At
increase your
present,
resolution so that you can
India
watch the
have
live video.
demand supply
There may be some
misalignment
disturbance
of
due to
chartered
network errors,
accountants.
so please kindly refresh
How
your
many
page
of you
so
are
that
aware that for
you can get the clear
managing
picture of the
98
slide.
lakh
Thank you,
businesses
ma'am.
registered
Yes,
under
thank you.
GST regime, we have only 3 lakh chartered accountants? Enduring demand for CA graduates is the main reason behind organizing this program.
Now the supporting
Always remember
documents
that
which are to be required to
even
be
your
uploaded,
destiny
the
fails,
same
the hard work will help you to
self-certified copies
succeed
of
in your life.
Annexure A. Suppose if
Our
the
Vice
GSTR
Chancellor
2A is
is
not
one such
containing that
person
particular
who is
invoices, out of
continuously
10, only
striving
9
for the career
are
progress
listed out.
and
One is
better
being listed out by the
opportunities for
supplier.
our
In that
students.
case, you can attach
His
the
unending
self-certified copies
commitments
of those
towards
missed
his
out
work
invoices.
have transformed
Self-declaration,
many of his
non-prosecution under
promises
Rule
into
91.
reality
So, what is
within
Rule
a
91
short span
talks
of
about?
time.
As they have told you, that
Anything is possible
the
when you
person
have
claiming the
right
refund
people
during
that to
any
support
period
you.
of 5 years
Our Honorable
immediately
Vice Chancellor
preceding the
is
tax
the main
period
wave of
for which
support
the refund is
who
being claimed,
welcomes
he
all
has
the
not been
endeavors of our
prosecuted.
department with
He has
his
not been prosecuted
gracious
under
smile.
any
Sir,
offense under this
without
act
your
or
support
under
and
any existing
encouragement,
law.
many
The
of the
amount of the
activities of
tax
our department
evaded, if
would
so,
not
if
have seen
any
its
he has
light.
evaded,
It
the
is
amount
my
of the tax
countless
evaded
pleasure
should
to
not
welcome
exceed
our Honorable Vice Chancellor
250
to this online program,
2,50,000 rupees
and I
alone.
wholeheartedly thank him
Now the
for his presence in
endorsement,
this
as I
session
told you, this
in spite of
endorsement
his
is the
busy schedule.
major source of primary source of evidence
And we
for
have
the
two most
officer who is going to
knowledgeable
sanction
resource
the
person
refund.
today
Only when the
who
officer
themselves
finds
have
the
sailed the
seal
boat of
and the
chartered
signature of the
accountancy
cess officer
on
at the
behalf of
back of the
Department of
invoice or on the
Commerce,
front side of
Bardiyar
the invoice,
University,
then
I
he is going to grant
wholeheartedly
us the
welcome
refund.
CA
So this is
Geeta
the
Kumar
major
and
source
CA
of
Ravi
evidence.
Kumar to enlighten the participants
Statement
and to
4,
plant the
Rule
dreams of
89
chartered
2D and
accountancy
89
among our
2E,
students.
2E. This is similar to
Education is the most
the
powerful weapon which
statement
you
which
can
we
use
have
to
used it
change
for
the
the
world.
previous
Now I
category of
welcome
refund.
all
That
the
was without
participants
payment
of
and
this
this is with
event
payment.
and
So
request
now
them to
again you
make
can
use
see
of this
the only extra two
learning
columns which
opportunity
we have
for
in the
stepping
statement
ahead
is
of the
the
career ladder.
column
I
intimating
also
the
welcome all the
taxes
faculty
paid,
members of
the
Department of
IGST
Commerce,
paid,
Bardiyar
the
University
IGST
to this
involved,
program.
including
I
the
once
net
again
of
welcome
debit
all
note
of you
and
to this
credit
online
note
program
issues.
and request your
Sorry for the
continuous presence
disturbance.
and attention
That
for the success of this
double
program.
voicing in the
Thank you.
video, ma'am.
Thank you for the opportunity.
It's not from your side, but something is interrupting.
Okay. Um,
Yes, sir. Just a second,
Now,
ma'am. We'll check it
now
out.
I invite
Yes, okay.
Honorable Vice Chancellor to give inaugural address.
Respected Chartered Accountant Geeta Kumar, Chairperson of Chennai SARC of ICA, Chartered Accountant Ravi Kumar, Chairman Career Counseling Committee
Dear
of
participants,
Chennai
kindly
SARC
check
of
whether now the sound is coming.
ICA, Dr. Sumati, Dr. Dhanabhagyam, Dr. Chellaswamy, Dr. Jagdishwaran from Bardiyar University, faculty
Dear
members, other faculty
participants,
members of
kindly
Bardiyar
check whether
University and other
the
academic
sound is coming.
institutions. I'm extremely happy to be here for this online career counseling program about Chartered Accountant course, which is jointly organized by the Department of Commerce, Bardiyar University, and Chengalpattu District Branch of SARC of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. I welcome you all for this program. It is heartening to know
Okay, participants, just a second. We'll check what it is.
the individual with the CA qualification, they belong to the allied group of the commerce industry. Because it is the chartered accountant, they decide or guide the management to initiate their commercial activities and when to take risk and where to take risk and how to protect themselves from the financial crisis. For a long time, people are not knowing that anyone, even with +2, I don't know whether recently they have changed or not, a +2 student also can go for CA. But only when you are having a valid degree, you'll be having the mental maturity and also have the attitude to work for that. But people like me, I used to think only the commerce student has to go for that, but it's not necessary. Anyone who has the attitude for the CA and having the interest to learn about that, they'll be able to
Dear participants, kindly check now. Is Is that all okay now? After your reply, you can start the video. We have stopped the streaming for a few minutes. So if the voice is clear now, we can start the video. Is that all okay? We can start the streaming. Yeah, you're right, participants. There is another program which has been live now. So that is the thing which is creating problem in between. So now it is okay, no? We'll start the streaming now. Ma'am, we can start, ma'am.
Yes, okay. Okay. See, as you can see now here, we have only the extra two columns here when compared to the previous category. You have the column for the integrated tax, which is paid. See, the earlier one was without payment, so we were not having the details of the IGST. Now here you need to give the details of the integrated tax paid, and that too after giving due effect to the debit notes and the credit notes. So the net IGST paid, the paid IGST is going to be claimed by way of a refund. So we need to upload this statement 4 along with the application. Hope we have discussed the other supporting document. So after successful uploading of these Excel tool, our RFD 1 will get successfully filed. After that, we'll be getting the ARN. So now let us move into the next category of refund, the ITC accumulated due to inverted duty structure. So like the similar other categories of refund, here also we need to upload the declaration under 54 and 54.3. Undertaking in relation to the section 16.2C and 42, the mismatch of credit and the eligibility for claiming the input tax credit. Statement 1 under Rule 89.5. See, below I have given the formula for computing the maximum refund permissible under the inverted duty structure. So statement 1 Rule 89.5 is nothing but the turnover of the inverted rated supplies of goods or services divided by the adjusted total turnover. So like as I told you earlier, what is mean by adjusted total turnover? It is nothing but the total turnover after excluding or after eliminating the exempted supply. That will give you the adjusted total turnover. Turnover of the inverted rated supply. That is turnover pertaining only to the inverted. A person may be dealing with both inverted duty goods and also with normal regular type of goods, like where both the input and the output rates are equal rate. It may be at 12%, both are equal. So he needs to proportionately split up the turnover so that he is eligible to claim only the refund pertaining to the inverted duty structure alone. So now these two turnover in proportionate should be multiplied with the net input tax credit. As I told you, net input tax credit is nothing but the credit which has been accumulated to the period for which we are going to file the refund form. So after arriving at this ITC, you could have already paid some amount on the inverted duty. Like as I told you, inverted input rate is 12%, output rate is 18%. I'm sorry, input rate is 18%, output rate is 12%. So the 12% amount you could have already paid. Out of the 18%, you could have already discharged 12% by way of output tax. So 18 minus 12, the balance 6% only will be the resultant, or that alone, the 6% alone only will be accumulated into your electronic credit ledger. So after computing the maximum amount, that has to be deducted from the tax which has already been paid on those outward supply. So the balance remaining amount which is yet to be, which is in the credit ledger and which is not going to be further utilized for any payment alone, that is the refund amount, that is the input tax credit amount which can be claimed as the refund amount. So statement 1 is nothing but the computation. Statement 1A under Rule 89.2H. Now this is the Excel tool which we are going to upload. This statement is asking information about all the details of the invoices, or both the inward supply and the outward supply has to be filled in. So we see the first 4 columns. 2, 3, 4, and 5, the GSTN of the supplier. This is the details pertaining to the inward supply. Detail pertaining to the procurement, purchases has to be filled in. The GSTN of the supplier, invoice number, date, taxable value. Now the next of three columns, 6, 7, and 8 will talk about the taxes paid on the inward supply. So it can be either IGST, it can be CGST or SGST. And the next 9, 10, and 11 column will ask you information regarding your outward supply. So up to from 2 to 8, you have the inward supply detail. From 9 to 14, you have the outward supply detail. So now the details of outward supply, invoice number, date, taxable value, the integrated tax, whether it is IGST output tax paid or output tax of CGST or SGST paid, has to be filled in. Now this is a very simple form which is asking you information regarding your total inward supply and total outward supply. So after filling out this form, you need to upload it along with the 1. So statement 1 and 1A also has to be uploaded. Self-declaration under 892L. So if the refund claim does not exceed 2 lakh rupee, self-declaration is sufficient.
Excuse me, ma'am. Sorry
Yes,
for the disturbance. Ma'am, participants are asking to come from the 13th slide once again, ma'am.
13.
Yeah, ma'am. They had disturbances in between from 13th slide, it seems.
Okay. Okay, the previous one, I think this one, yes.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
See, this statement is nothing but the refund computation. This is the maximum permissible refund which is allowed for the export of goods or services for a cess unit. See here, this is an example which I have given here. The total turnover is 2 lakh rupee. Total turnover is 3 lakh rupee. Turnover pertaining to the zero dated supply is alone 2 lakh rupee. And among these total turnover, I also have a component of exempted turnover, which is 50,000 rupee. So now I need to compute my adjusted total turnover. What is my adjusted total turnover? I need to eliminate my exempted turnover from the total turnover. So 3 lakh rupee minus 50,000, the net amount of 2 lakh 50,000 is my adjusted total turnover. Also, I have the net ITC, that is ITC pertaining to the period for which I have claimed my refund. I'm going to claim my refund is 45,000 rupee. Now we need to apply this to the formula which I have mentioned above. Turnover of zero rated divided by the adjusted total turnover multiplied by the net input tax credit. So turnover of zero rated is 2 lakh. It is already given in the example. Adjusted total turnover which I have computed after eliminating exempted amounts to 2 lakh 50,000 rupee multiplied by the net ITC which is 45,000. So then now the resultant figure is 36,000 alone. So out of 45,000, I am still eligible to claim the refund of only 36,000 alone. What happens to the balance 9,000? The balance 9,000 pertains to the exempted turnover. Balance 9,000 pertains to the exempted turnover. So now this is the maximum eligible refund claim for the cess unit. The next slide. Next slide is I was discussing about the refund on cess supplies with the payment of taxes. Now the previous one was without taxes and this one is with taxes. So all the declaration undertaking are similar to the previous category which we have discussed now. All the section 16(2)(z) requirement, section 42 requirement, and self-declaration under 892L. If the refund does not exceed 2 lakh rupee, if it is exceed 2 lakh rupee, 892M will be applicable. That is, a certificate is required to be attached. Certificate from a chartered accountant or a cost accountant is required to be attached. And the supporting documents we always have seen. We also have discussed this. Annexure A, if it is not found in 2A, and declaration under Rule 91 that the person has not been prosecuted for any offense earlier. And also, if he has been prosecuted, the tax evaded does not exceed 2,50,000 rupees. And endorsement is the primary source of evidence. So in all the invoices that you have issued to the cess unit, the cess officer has to affix his seal or sign in the front page or on the back side of the invoices. Only when you produce this document, the refund claim is said to be a valid one. So now this is a statement 89.2D and 2E, which I've already discussed. So now I have moved into the inverted duty structure. Hope you would have got the example which I have discussed. Now, and a simple example, very simple example for inverted duty structure I have given here. Say there are 3 kinds of raw material which I am using it for manufacture of my finished product Z. My raw material is A, raw material B, and raw material C. All the 3 raw materials are being equivalently consumed for making out for arriving at the finished product Z. Now the GST rate for raw material A is 5%, for raw material B is 12%, for raw material C is 18%. But now my finished product Z, the GST rate is only 12%. So now I have already paid excess tax by way of 18 plus 5, 23% I have paid in excess. So this input 12 and output 12 will get offset against each other. Now the 18 and 5%, almost 23% of my taxes will get accumulated into my electronic credit ledger. Now this is the scenario where I can apply for refund under the inverted duty structure. Hope it is clear for everyone. And this statement 1A also, just now we have discussed. The statement is asking information about all the inward supply and outward supply. From column 2 to column 8, we are giving details about the inward supply. From column 9 to column 14, we are giving details about the outward supply. So I'm just moving into the next slide. On account of refund by recipient of deemed export. So this is the category which we have seen, which I have discussed, that either of the party, that is either the supplier or the recipient, only one of the parties is allowed to claim the refund. Now the declaration is not as per Rule 54. Now we have a different declaration under Rule 89.2G. What is the declaration under 89.2G? This is the declaration given by the recipient stating that the refund has been claimed only for those invoices which have been disclosed in the statement 5B. So see here below, I have given the Excel table. This is the statement 5B. So refund have been claimed for those invoices which are disclosed in the statement 5B for the tax period for which the refund is being claimed, and the amount does not exceed the amount of input tax credited, the amount of input tax credit availed in the valid return filed for the said tax period. So you cannot claim for a refund with something more than the accumulated ITC. Whatever be the input tax credit which is accumulated in your ledger, credit ledger alone, you are eligible to claim the refund. The applicant also has to declare that the supplier, since this is the refund claim by recipient, the recipient has to declare that the supplier has not claimed the refund with respect to these supplies. So these are the 2 points that has to be declared under Rule 89.2G. Statement 5B. What is Statement 5B? So here is the Excel tool. Details of all the invoices of the outward supply. In case refund is claimed by the supplier. Now we are talking about only the recipient. So we'll just skip the first 3 lines. We'll just take the last 3 lines on. Details of invoices of inward supply. In case refund is claimed by the recipient. If it is claimed by the recipient, you have to furnish the GSTN of the supplier. If it is claimed by the supplier, you have to furnish the GSTN of the recipient. So it is vice versa. Number, invoice number, date, taxable value. Now what is the value of the taxes paid? So taxes can be either IGST, CGST, SGST, or cess. So whatever is applicable. Now this statement 5B has to filled in. Undertaking 16.2C and section 42. So we hope we had plenty of discussion under this section. Self-declaration under 89.2L. If the amount does not exceed 2 lakh, if the refund claim exceed 2 lakh rupee, then you have to give a certificate from a chartered accountant or a cost accountant. Now coming to the supporting documents. What are the supporting documents that has to be uploaded? All the document requirements mentioned as per circular number 14/14. Now this is a very special circular which is issued by the GSTN Council. which is issued by the CBIC for meeting out the requirements for claiming refund by the recipient of the deemed export. Now, what are all the points mentioned in the circular? The recipient of the deemed export should give a prior intimation. This is a procedure actually to be followed. The recipient of the deemed export should give a prior intimation in prescribed format. The format is called as Form A, having details about the goods that he is going to procure. So the procurement details, it has to be intimated on a preliminary basis. Before making any procurement, the first step you have to do is that you have to intimate the procurement details in Form A. To whom should you have to report? It should be reported to the Development Commissioner of the area. It should be reported to the Development Commissioner, and this should be approved by him. And also the supplier details also should be given. So from the person from whom you are going to procure the goods, the details of the supplier also should be given. The copies of these details should also be given to the registered supplier, that so and so procurement has to be done, and this is the supplier name, his GSTN number, etc. All these details should be, the copy should be given to the registered supplier. The jurisdictional GST officer of the registered supplier, not only your own jurisdictional officer, but also the jurisdiction which is pertaining to your supplier also should be intimated that these are all the transactions that is going to happen in the future. The jurisdictional GST officer of the registered recipient. So both the officers who are all coming under the jurisdictional region of the recipient also should be given, and the supplier also should be given. Both the people should be given. After the supply is done, now this is a step which has to be done before making supply. After completing the supply, there is one more process. After the supply is done, the supplier issues a tax invoice. Yes, this is a normal procedure. So he issues a tax invoice. The recipient have to endorse. Recipient have to endorse and send a copy to the above officers. To the above officers means who? The jurisdiction officer of the supplier, jurisdiction officer of the recipient, both the people. All the detail relating to the deemed export should be maintained in an electronic format, and that is called as Format B. So Format A is something which is to be done before making procurement. Format B is to be done, something which is to be done after making the procurement. So the details should be maintained in electronic format, Form B, by the recipient. So every month, this data in Form B should be submitted to the jurisdictional officer of the recipient. How are you going to submit these details? These details should be submitted in either in a CD, a compact disc, or a pen drive, or whatever be the mode which is convenient for the recipient. He may even take a printout of all the details, and then he can submit it to the jurisdictional officer. So this is the requirement which has to be, followed as per circular number 14/14 by the recipient of the deemed export. A special procedure which is notified. Now we'll move into the refund by supplier of the deemed export. So now the previous one is by recipient, this is by supplier. Declaration under 89(2)(g). So again, what is declaration under 89(2)(g)? Since this refund is going to be filed by the supplier, he has to get an undertaking from the recipient by ensuring that the recipient is not going to claim the refund, or the recipient is not going to utilize the taxes. So the supplier files, recipient has to give the declaration. The recipient files, supplier has to give the declaration. Statement 5B under Rule 89(2)(g) is what we have seen in the previous one, 5B 89(2)(g). This table is used for both the refund claim by the supplier and also by the recipient. Undertaking as per section 16 and 42. Yes, the eligibility criteria for claiming the input tax credit and also the matching mechanism under 42 should be followed, should be ensured. Self-declaration under 89(2)(l), if the refund does not exceed 2 lakh. Suppose if the refund claim exceeds 2 lakh, then certificate from a chartered accountant or a cost accountant as per 89(2)(m). What are all the supporting documents that has to be uploaded? Document requirements as per notification number 49/2017 along with the circular 14/14. So the points which you have discussed under this circular should be followed. In addition to that, we also have some process that has to be followed as per notification number 49/2017. What is the procedures prescribed in notification number 49/2017? The acknowledgement by the jurisdictional tax officer that the said deemed export supplies have been received by the advance authorization holder, or a copy of the tax invoice which is duly signed by the recipient of the EOU unit, and that the said supplies are received. Actually, there is no fake, this is not a fake transaction. The said supplies are actually received. So who has to acknowledge? The jurisdictional tax officer of the supplier of the deemed export has to acknowledge. An undertaking by the recipient of deemed export stating that no input tax credit on such supply has been availed by him. Yes, of course, the supplier has to get an undertaking from the recipient by ensuring that the recipient has not availed the input tax credit. An undertaking by the recipient of deemed export that he shall not claim the refund on such supply. So the recipient should not do 2 points. First one is that he should not claim the input tax credit on those supply. The other thing is that he should not have claimed the refund on those supply, because the refund is going to be claimed by the supplier. These are the 3 points which has to be, 3 undertakings which has to be followed by the supplier before making the application for the refund. So now only the supporting document is that when we satisfy the condition or meet the requirements of notification number 49 and circular number 14, this is done. The refund scenario is over under this category. Moving into the next category, refund of excess payment of taxes. Again, section 16, section 42, section 89(2)L, if it does not exceed 2 lakh, if it is exceed 2 lakh, 89(2)M, hope you would have better known by this time. Statement 7 under rule 89(2)K. What is 7? Now I have listed out here. What is statement 7? So since this is a refund based on the excess payment of taxes, this information is regarding the taxes paid, which has been paid in excess. So the tax period for which you have paid the tax in excess has to be declared here. ARN number of the return. So for each and every return you file, you will be getting the ARN number. So now the ARN number of the return in which you have paid the excess taxes has to be mentioned here. The date of filing of return, the actual date on which you are going to file the return, the taxes paid, which means the excess taxes paid. So the excess taxes can be paid under either IGST, or it can be paid under CGST or SGST. Or by mistake, people could have paid under cess. Instead of paying it under SGST, when you take up the mouse cursor, it moves so freely that the cursor will sit on cess instead of SGST. So without noticing or without ignoring, the taxpayer could have deposited the amount under cess. When you deposit the amount under cess, it cannot be utilized for against any other head payment. It cannot be utilized for IGST, CGST or SGST. In those cases, you can claim the refund by filling in this statement 7. The next category is refund of taxes which is paid on intra, subsequently held to be inter, and vice versa. As I told you, people may think this is an intrastate, but after checking the GST and only, he comes to know that this is an interstate transaction. And similarly, vice versa also. For those categories of refund, you have to ensure that the undertaking under 16(2)Z and 42 alone are satisfied. Statement 6 under 89(2)J. What is statement 6? So now see, you can see below statement 6 under 89(2)J. This is asking the information about the taxes paid. So GSTIN number, or suppose if he's a unregistered person, then the name of the person. Details of the invoices covering transaction considered as intra or inter. So whatever you have considered it wrongly should be filled in the first columns from 2 to 10. Invoice number, date, value, taxable value, whatever be the amount of taxes paid. It can be IG, CG, ST, cess. And the most important thing, see, you have to mention the place of supply. Only when you mention the place of supply, you will be able to decide whether this is an interstate transaction or the intrastate transaction. Transactions which were held interstate or intrastate supply subsequently. Now the first 2 to 10 talks about the erroneous declaration of data. The last 11 to 15 columns talks about the correct what is the actual fact of the transaction, the IGST, CGST, cess, and also the place of supply. So when you fill the place of supply, you will be able to identify whether this is an intrastate or an interstate. So after filling up the statement 6, you just need to upload it along with these two, along with this one and only undertaking. So your refund process is said to have been completed. It's a very simple form. Since this is regarding to only to the payment of taxes, the refund attachments are also very simple. The next refund criteria is refund on account of provisional assessment basis. As I told you, you're always liable to pay some percentage of demand before proceeding with any appeal. And at last, when your appeal becomes a favorable thing to you, which results in nil rate of taxes or nil demand to be paid by the taxpayer, then what happens to the amount which is already paid in preliminary to the proceeding of the demand? In those cases, that person can claim the refund by using this category. So now, the self-declaration under 89(2)L, if it does not exceed 2 lakh, and if it exceeds 2 lakh rupee, 89(2)M certificate from a chartered accountant or a cost accountant is required. Also, you have to ensure that section 16 conditions and section 42 conditions are met by the taxpayer. What are the supporting documents to be uploaded? You have to just upload the, you have to just provide the proof of the payment of taxes, the advance deposits which you have done in before proceeding to any appeal. We have to just provide the details of the payment of taxes. So it can be the copy of the challan itself, or it can be the reference number of the challan, the date on which you are making the payment, or the reference number of the final order which has been issued by the court or any appellate tribunal, or the provisional assessment, or anything, or any other order issued by the court. These two documents are the documents which are the primary source of evidence to ensure that refund is on account of assessment or provisional order. Now the last category, the refund on any others. So the last residual category, since we don't have any specific attachments or any specific declaration or undertaking, in general we always give the undertaking of satisfaction of conditions prescribed in section 16 and section 42. So this is a very general declaration. So again we need to declare the general undertaking, and the self-declaration, whether it exceeds 2 lakh or if it is below 2 lakh, the self-declaration or a certificate from a CA or CMA is required. And what are all the supporting document? Any document in support of the claim, whatever you think, or whatever you may feel this is the correct proof, any document can be uploaded in support of your refund claim. Now these are all the categories of refund, along with the statements or undertaking any additional documents which are required to be uploaded. Now we'll move into some of the specific provisions which have been issued or which comes along with section 54, refund. So now exceptions, withholding and non-payment of refund. Why the refund has to be withheld? Why the refund will not be paid by the officer? Or why there is an exception? So now these are all the points which says that the refund can be withheld. The refund need not be paid under these circumstances and conditions. Exceptions. The refund will not be claimed. The no refund of unutilized input tax credit will be allowed in case where the goods exported out of India are subject to export duty. This we have discussed in the undertaking part itself. Undertaking under section 54 always says that when the goods are subject to export duty, refund is denied. It is not eligible for refund. No refund of input tax credit will be allowed if the supplier of the goods or services avails the duty drawback in respect of the central claim or claim of the IGST on those supply. So if you feel that there is any duty drawback, if the officer feels if there is any duty drawback for these particular kind of refund, then the officer will not allow the refund claim for those. There may be some chances for withholding the refund also. What are all the reasons for withholding? The taxpayer has defaulted in furnishing any return, so he's not proper in furnishing the return. So he has filed April, May, and from June onwards he has not filed the return. Now he's going to apply. Now he's making an application for refund claim from September onwards. So what happens to the previous 4 months? No return filed. If no return is filed, no refund claim will be sanctioned. Defaulted in payment of taxes, any interest or penalty. The taxpayer has defaulted and he is still having the liability in his hands. Still he has not settled his liability, then the refund claim is not allowed. Also, the proper officer is authorized to deduct from the refund due any taxes, interest, penalty, fee, or any other amount which the taxpayer is liable to pay, but still which is remaining unpaid. So if something which is remaining unpaid, and if the person has applied for the refund, the officer is always having the power to withhold that particular portion and then sanction the balance amount. Withholding of refund under section 54. Suppose if there is an appeal which is pending with applicant, where an order giving rise to a refund is a subject matter of appeal or further proceedings, or where any other proceedings under this act is pending, and the commissioner is of the opinion that the granting of this refund is likely to or adversely will affect the revenue. So when you grant the refund, the person will not pay. This is the opinion of the commissioner. So in case of situations like this, when the appeals are pending or the proceedings are pending, and the officer feels that when you grant the refund, the person is not going to pay hereafter, he may, after giving a taxable person an opportunity of being heard. So anything, always the opportunity must be given first. Then only the refund can be withheld. After giving the proper reasonable opportunity of being heard, withhold the refund till such time as he may think fit or as he may decide on his own. Then only the proper officer will sanction the balance amount. Withholding of the refund of casual taxable and non-resident taxable. So always these two people have to pay the taxes in advance. So hope you could have discussed these provisions under the registration chapter. When people are taking up registration as a CTP or NRTP, it is a mandatory rule that their estimated tax liability has to be paid first, and then only their registration will be granted. In those cases, when the officer feels that the CTP or the NRTP is not going to pay the balance amount, or in respect of the entire period of his registration, which is valid, he is not going to furnish the return, or he is not going to pay the taxes, then he may withhold the refund for these two categories of people. Non-payment of refund. No refund will be paid to the applicant if the amount is less than 1,000 rupee. So there are minimum criteria for making an application, refund application is 1,000 rupee for particular head. Remember, this is not under a consolidated basis. This is not in total IGST, CGST, SGST put together. It is not 1,000. It is IGST 1,000, CGST 1,000, SGST 1,000. So when you say if you want to claim the refund for 100 in CGST, 100 in SGST, system will not allow you, because refund is always permissible only when the minimum amount is 1,000 rupees. So now we'll move into the next discussion of the circular number 125/44/2019. This was a very important circular. Almost the circular ran into 29 to 30 pages, discussing in detail the elaborate procedures and process for sanctioning of the refund. That is how the refund application should be made, how the officer will process your refund, and what is the maximum time limit within which the refund application has to be processed. Everything was brought out neatly in this circular. So just a few points to keep in mind from the circular number 125. So with effect from 26/9/2019, we are always having the fully automated refund. Earlier it was like manual interruption, like you need to take out printout of all the forms filed, and then you have to go to the jurisdictional officer, submit it to the officer in physical. So physical presence was required earlier. Now with effect from 26/9, the entire refund process is set to be fully electronic. So all steps starting from the submission and processing of the refund will be undertaken electronically. So now the GST policy wing also has issued the circular with a detailed set of guidelines for electronic processing of refund. So even the officer may not be aware. So the officer also has to go through this particular circular and to ensure that the full disbursement is being done in an electronic model. So starting from form GST RFD1, which is the application form I told you, which should be submitted along with the undertaking, and then no other document need to be submitted in physical. in person to the officer. Whatever you want to submit, you have to upload everything, because now the application will allow you to upload a maximum of 5 documents, maximum of 4 documents, each of size 5 MB. So one document can be maximum of 5 MB. So 5 into 4, up to 20 MB of document you can upload along with the refund application. So neither the RFD form or the supporting document required to be physically submitted. Once you upload, that's all. The job is done. Over. So immediately you will get the ARN number. As I told you, ARN number should be will be from the date of generation of ARN number. Either RFD2 has to be generated, that is acknowledgement, or the deficiency memo RFD3 should be issued. So now when RFD3 is issued, deficiency is issued, the officer is requiring you some more information. Again, you have to resubmit it, and then you have to generate a fresh ARN. And now the circular also has given a point that because of the migration process from the erstwhile laws, from the erstwhile service tax, old VAT laws, people could have migrated to GST. At the time of migration, they were not aware of the jurisdiction which they belong. I may be located in Tambaram, but I may not be knowing whether I'm belonging to Tambaram circle or I'm belonging to Krombet circle. I may not be aware. So people could have wrongly selected some jurisdiction. In those cases, the refund application which are being transmitted to a wrong jurisdiction, the officer in that jurisdiction has to redirect or has to reassign the refund form to the correct jurisdiction. And that way, this has to be done within 3 working days. So just think of the amount of help that has been done by the department. Suppose if our refund application is filed wrongly, the officer himself has to redirect it to the correct jurisdiction, so that the taxpayer may not suffer unnecessarily. The taxpayer need not suffer unnecessarily. So now the some taxpayers may not be assigned with the proper jurisdiction, or they may be still left without assigning a proper jurisdiction. In those cases, the refund application pertaining to those taxpayers are transmitted to their jurisdiction where they were related to in their old laws, that is in service tax and VAT period, in which jurisdiction I was, I may be redirected to that particular jurisdiction. So until I am being allotted with the new jurisdiction, all my refund works, all my process will be taken care by my officer in the old jurisdiction, in the old area itself. And you have to always remember that the returns, GST 3B and 1 return, up to date, it should have been filed before making the refund application. So today, if you're going to file the refund application, you have to ensure that up to yesterday, what are all the returns that are due for filing has been properly filed. And also, as I told you, the refund, the proper officer, after getting your refund form, may immediately sanction 90% of the refund claim. This is because the input tax credit which has been put into your credit ledger is always based on the provisional terms. It is always based on the provisional terms, because the supplier may file or may not be filed. Sometimes due to any mistakes or errors caused, the supplier may not declare one of your invoices. In those cases, the recipient cannot be denied that the input tax credit is not eligible. In those cases, the proper officer has to provisionally accept the input tax credit. After proper verification, he may still sanction the balance amount of 10%. And also now there is a relaxation given under the circular that earlier refund cannot be clubbed. Say if you are a quarterly filer, you have to file refund on a quarterly basis. If you are a monthly filer, you have to file refund on a monthly basis. So monthly filer cannot file on a quarterly basis, and quarterly filer cannot file on a monthly basis. But now the relaxation has been given that clubbing of quarters, clubbing of months are equivalently allowed for all the taxpayer. So April, May, June quarter can be clubbed with the July, August, September, or even I can file the refund for the entire financial year. Starting from April to March, I can file the refund for the entire financial year. And now we also had one more circular number 135 /05, which was issued on 31st March 2020. And this circular says that the restriction on bunching of the refund claims across the financial years. Bunching of the refund claim across the financial year is also allowed. Earlier, you cannot file the refund application by clubbing of March and April, but now you are allowed to club the March month and April month refund claims. So clubbing across financial year is also allowed. Now moving to the next slide, refund should be filed in a chronological order. Yes, for unutilized ITC, say if the period should be in a chronological order. Say if you're claiming for April, May, June, then the subsequent claim should be for July, August, and September. Again, you cannot go and claim for April, May, June under some other categories of refund. Again, for some other category. So always it should be in a sequential order, a chronological order should be maintained here. RFD 3, that is a deficiency memo when it is issued, it shows that the refund has not been accepted. Your refund claim has not been accepted by the officer. In those cases, there will be an automatic recredit of the refund claim either into your cash ledger or the credit ledger. See, whenever you file the refund, the moment you submit the refund form, there will be a debit from your cash ledger if it is an excess payment, or there will be a debit from your credit ledger if it is for unutilized ITC. The moment when the officer finds this is not eligible and if he issues RFD 3, which means it is being rejected, in those cases, the debited amount again will get recredited into your cash ledger if it is debited from the cash ledger, or it will get recredited into your credit ledger if it is debited from your credit ledger. So wherever the amount is being taken, it will get replaced directly, provided if the RFD 03 deficiency is being issued. So always I told you this point, even if you're resubmitting the application, the relevant period of 2 years has to be considered. Suppose if there is any irregularity in your refund claim, the officer is not satisfied with your refund claim. First, he will issue the provisional amount of 90% provisional refund claim, and after further processing and further verification, he might be issuing the balance 10%. Or sometimes if the officer feels that the entire claim is very perfect, he may directly pass the final order RFD 06. And now earlier, the center and the state jurisdiction has been given separate powers for disbursal of the refund claim. What happens is that if I claim 100, for example, if I claim 1 lakh rupee under CGST, 1 lakh rupee under SGST, first the central jurisdiction officer will process my refund claim, and then he may issue the order to the state jurisdictional officer. In those cases, there might be enormous amount of time delay. So first the central officer has to process, and then he has to issue the order to the state officer, and then the state officer will take some time to process. So in those cases, there will be a huge amount of delay. But now, after the issue of the circular, both the center and the state officer have been given the equivalent powers. So which means if you're claiming refund under CGST and SGST, the center officer himself can issue the refund for the state jurisdiction also. If you're claiming refund and if you're coming under the state jurisdiction, the state officer can himself issue the order for the center authority also. So now the process has become more shorter, and immediately we have the possibility of getting the refund. Now, as I told you, there might be some provisional granting of refund and subsequently final order will be issued. There may be some scenarios where the refund granted in your final order is less than the amount granted in your provisional order. So here I have given you an example. See, the ITC is 100 rupee. Provisional refund received, since 90% of the refund claim is being granted as a provisional claim, 90 rupee is being granted as the provisional refund. But the officer, after proper verification of the records, is providing that you are eligible only to claim the refund claim of 70 rupees alone. But earlier, you have received the provisional claim of 90, and now you have the final refund value. You are eligible for a final refund value of 70 only. So what happens to the balance 20 rupee? The balance 20 rupee is the rejected portion. The officer will issue RFD 08 because this is some ineligible portion, or the officer may feel that there is no proper documentary evidence for these balance 20 rupee. So he may reject the claim. In those cases, already your bank account is being credited with 90. So now the officer will issue notice under section 73 and 74 for recovery proceeding of the 20 rupee along with the interest and penalty. For recovery proceeding under section 73 and 74 along with the interest and penalty. So 20 rupee will again be collected by the officer, or he may issue a DRC 7 challan. This is the demand challan which will be created by the officer, or the DRC 03, the voluntary payment which will be done by the taxpayer himself. The taxpayer feels that this 20 is not eligible. Yes, I accept, sir, this 20 is not eligible. The taxpayer feels he may voluntarily pay back the 20 rupee again to the electronic cash ledger or credit ledger from wherever it was taken. Or the refund claim was actually done for 100 and the final value is only for 70. So what will happen to the balance 30 rupee? The balance 30 rupee will be automatically recredited to the electronic credit ledger by the taxpayer himself. So when the officer issues GST PMT 03, the amount of the refund claim which was rejected will again be recredited to the electronic credit ledger. If it is taken from the cash ledger, it will be recredited to the cash ledger. If it is taken from the credit ledger, it will be recredited to the credit ledger. So again, you have to ensure that there is no adjustment for withholding or refund. If there is any amount that has to be withheld, the officer will adjust those amount, and then only he will issue the order for recrediting. Only the balance amount will be recredited. So the rejection RFD 8, the 20 rupee, the ineligible claim will be issued in RFD 8 as an ineligible portion. That ineligible portion has to be either paid by the taxpayer himself on a voluntary basis using the challan DRC 3, or the officer may issue a demand challan, DRC 7 challan, demand challan, so that the tax officer will ask the taxpayer to pay the balance amount. So this is an example in case where the provisional amount differs from the final amount. The provisional amount is greater than the final refund claim. Now we'll move into the scrutiny of records. What are all the checks that are given for different categories of refund? So in the case of refund claim for export without payment of taxes, the shipping bill and the AGM will be verified from the IceGate portal. So it is advised for the officer that not to check only for the GSTR 1 filed for that refund period alone, but also to consider the table 9 of GSTR 1 of the subsequent period also, so that if any mistake is made by the taxpayer, he could have used the subsequent month return to get it rectified. So if the officer verifies only that particular month, he may not be able to find out whether this amount is a proper figure or not. So he has to check the subsequent month return figures also, so that he will get a clear idea of what is being done by the taxpayer. So in case of any errors or omission, subsequent month return will definitely show you what is being done. Because at the initial phase of implementation of GST, people have committed errors. So instead of declaring it in zero rated supply, all the export turnover, they have declared it in exempted supplies. So there is a different row, exempted supply. Now, when you declare it in exempted supply, what does it mean? Your refund claim is said to be ineligible. And in the case of cess refund also, similar errors have been committed. Instead of declaring it in zero rated, people have declared it in exempted supply. So not only the from GSTR 3B return, you always have to consider the row number 3.1A, 1B, and 1C cumulatively. You should not only consider 3.1B, 3.1A, B, and C should be considered cumulatively for identifying the correct amount of the zero rated turnover. And as I told you earlier, both center and state was given the refund separately. But now since the refund is being distributed, now it is being dispersed through the PFMS. What is meant by PFMS? Public Financial Management System. it is being refund. The entire refund claim is being disbursed through PFMS. The time span for getting the refund is more shorter and quicker. Now, how this PFMS work? This PFMS works like after the submission of the RFD1 form, a unique SSC code will be created by the PFMS. The PFMS will validate your bank account number, which you have given at the time of registration. It will validate your bank account number. A unique code which is the combination of your GSTIN and the bank account number will be generated by the PFMS. So this is why people are advised, taxpayers are advised to provide only one bank account number. If you provide multiple bank account number in your GST portal, then the PFMS will get confused, or it may generate multiple unique SSC code. So it may get confused to which unique SSC code the refund should be granted, and the refund will be put on hold. So it's always advised that only one valid bank account number should be given, so that the PFMS will create a unique code by combining both the GST number and the bank account number, so that the refund can be directly processed through this unique SSC code. Suppose if your bank account is found to be invalid, in those cases, taxpayers are advised to make amendment to your bank account number. So you would have erroneously left one digit in your bank account number and it is not being validated. So in those cases, a message will be passed on to both the taxpayer and the officer that the bank account number is not valid. So again, now the taxpayer has to make an amendment in the portal. He has to correct the bank account number, and after proper correction, again it will be redirected. The refund process will be redirected. So whatever be the delay in number of days for sanctioning the refund, any number of days, interest should be provided at the rate of 6% per annum. Interest should be provided at 6% per annum. So if there is a 1 month delay, so 6% into 30 by 365. This is the refund amount into 6% into 30 by 365. This is the amount of interest that we are going to get for the delayed refund. So moving to the guidelines for GST refund. Yes, I have some more time. Guidelines for GST refund. So based on the different categories of refund, the first one is the cess refund. For refund of unutilized ITC, or it may be unutilized ITC due to inverter duty structure also. In those cases, GSTR 2A always act as a primary evidences. So GSTR 2A has to be uploaded with your refund claim form, so that the officer will check only the GSTR 2A, and based on all the invoices reflected in the 2A, he will be sanctioning you the amount of refund. So the applicant shall also upload the details of all the invoices which are not listed out in the 2A. So because the mistake is made by the supplier, mistake is committed by the supplier, and because of it, the recipient cannot be denied of the eligible credit. So in those cases, the taxpayer, the person who is claiming the refund, can upload the self-certified copies of the invoices. The applicant also should upload the details of the invoices based on which the input tax credit is going to be claimed. So all the details, all the list of the inward supplies, all the list of the inward procurement has to be listed out in Annexure B. And also there is a provision given for valuation of the turnover of zero rated supply. Now what the provision says is that the value of the turnover of the zero rated supply should always be restricted. There is a maximum cap fixed for it. So it always be restricted to 1.5 times the value of the goods which are domestically supplied. So when you make any local supply, when you make the supply within India, or when you make the supply to domestic tariff area, it is not a cessy area, it's a normal regular area, and the value of zero rated should be restricted to 1.5 times of the domestic supply area. And also the proper officer should not insist on submission of the invoice copy, because all the invoice details are available in GSTR 2A. GSTR 2A is the primary evidence. So he should not ask for the invoice copies of all the transactions that are listed out in 2A. If it is not listed out in 2A, whatever be the missed out thing, he may ask for the invoice copy. But for all the items which are listed in 2A, the officer should not insist for the invoice copy. In case of refund of tax paid on Deemed export. Now we have to comply with the requirements of section 49/2017, the deemed export, which this point we have already discussed in this slide, where the documentary evidences are required to be given, which has to be followed when the supplier is making the supply of deemed export. So like submission of acknowledgement to the jurisdictional officer of the supplier and also to the recipient in form A, form B. So all these points we have discussed. Refund of the TDS or TCS, that is a refund of the excess taxes paid. When the tax deductor or collector is deposited under the wrong head or something which is in excess, thereby creating an excess balance in the cash ledger, either the deductor or the collector, whatever be the case may be, they may claim the refund under excess taxes paid. But it is also clarified that such excess balance may be claimed by the tax deductor or the collector from his cash ledger, because this amount will always be put into your electronic cash ledger only, because this is the excess amount credit, excess cash collected, excess taxes paid. This will not go into a credit ledger. It will always be remaining in your cash ledger only. So either the deductor or the collector can claim the excess taxes paid from his cash ledger. So now when the tax deductor or collector has been discharged, so from the cash ledger you have ultimately utilized, there is nothing left, but it is a wrong utilization, it is a excess utilization. What will happen in this case? So when the taxes paid has been discharged, then the said amount will be credited to the electronic credit ledger of the deductee. Yes, if I have utilized means what will happen when the deductor files his GST or TDS return, it will get transferred to the cash ledger or the credit ledger of the deductee. Now again the deductee, since because there is no liability for this, now the deductee can claim the refund under the head excess of refund paid. Now refund of the IGST paid on exports. Now again, as I told you, shipping bill and EGM, export general manifesto, has to be verified from the IceGate portal, and these two documents are the primary source of evidence in the case of IGST paid on exports. Shipping bill, first one, shipping bill should always be matched with the GSTR 1 and 3B return filed. And at the time, since this is an automated refund, you are not going to file anything to claim the refund. There is an automatic matching mechanism between the GST portal and the IceGate portal. So whatever is the data being fed in GSTR 1 and 3B should match with the shipping bill. After successful validation by the IceGate portal, first the GST portal will transfer the data to the IceGate portal. After successful validation by the IceGate portal, refund will be granted from the custom departments. Refund will be directly credited to your bank account from the custom department. Now there are clarifications issued relating to zero-rated supplies also. So what will happen in the case of exports are made before executing LUT? See, I forgot to take my LUT, but already I have issued my export bill. What will happen in this case? Now, in such cases, the delay in furnishing of LUT may be condoned, and the facility for export under LUT may be allowed on ex post facto basis. This is what given in the circular. So the unnecessarily the exporter need not be put into burden. This is only a procedural lapse in taking the LUT. So it may be condoned and LUT may be allowed on a ex post facto basis, taking into account the facts and circumstances of the case. What will happen if the goods not exported within the prescribed time limit? See, if you make any procurement for export, it has to be done within the prescribed period. If it is not done, what are the consequences that has to be faced by the taxpayer? The exporter is liable to pay the tax due along with the interest as applicable within a period of 15 days from the expiry of 3 months or such extended period as may be notified by the commissioner. So usually it is only 3 months. Within 3 months, the export has to be done. If it is not done, or the taxpayer may seek some excuse from the commissioner also may extend some period. So from the extended period, within 15 days, the taxpayer has to make the payment. Since he earlier told it is export, the government is not going to collect any taxes. but now he has not exported the goods, so he has to definitely pay the taxes. So the time period in case of export, it is 15 days. In case of services, it is 15 days from after the expiry of 1 year or such other extended period as may be allowed by the commissioner from the date of issue of the invoice for the export. From the date of issue of invoice has to be counted if such payment is not received in convertible foreign exchange. Also, it is clarified that the export have been zero rated under the IGST. So as long as goods are actually being exported, it remains as IGST within 3 months. But once when the time period expires and still the export is not done, payment of IGST first and then claiming of refund should not be insisted by the officer. So this is also notified under the circular. Now again, there is a proof of realization of export. So sometimes in the value declared in the tax invoice is different from the export value declared in the corresponding shipping bill. So this might be because of the foreign exchange fluctuations. Every day you might be having a different exchange rate. So today you might be having 76, tomorrow you might be having 77. So these are all the exchange rate fluctuations. In those cases, what the circular says is that the lower of the two value should be always taken into account while computing the refund amount. So shipping bill, tax invoice, whichever is lower should be taken into account for considering the refund claim. Also, it is clarified that the incidence of proof of realization of export proceeds for the refund should not be insisted upon. The officer should not ask for the realization like BRC certificates or FIRC. The officer should not ask. Only when there is any ambiguity or when there is any doubt and he needs further clarification, he has to ask for the document. And in the case of export of non-GST goods or exempted goods, there is non-GST goods that does not come under the GST purview. And in case of export of exempted goods, LUT is not required because it is already an exempted thing. So LUT is not required to be undertaken or taken. Rule 96B with effect from 23rd March 2020. What this Rule 96B says is that where any refund of unutilized ITC on account of export of goods or IGST paid on export of goods has been paid to an applicant, but the sale proceeds have not been realized. So you have made an export invoice, but you have not received the sale proceeds. There is no realization of the sale proceed as per the Foreign Exchange Management Act. So for every export sale, there is a cutoff period mentioned as per the FEMA Act. Within the prescribed period, if you have not realized, including the extended period by the commissioner, the person to whom the refund has been made, again he shall deposit the refunded amount to the government. So whatever is being granted as a refund, again it should be taken back from the exporter or it should be taken back from the taxpayer because he has not met the requirement mentioned as per the FEMA. Suppose when the sale proceeds in respect of goods are not realized by the applicant within the prescribed period as per the FEMA Act, but the Reserve Bank of India has written off the requirement. It says that there is no such requirement hereafter. We can waive it off. In those cases, the refund paid to the applicant will not be recovered. So only if it is not waived off by the RBI, the refund claim will be taken back from the exporter. If it is waived off, then the exporter need not again pay back the refund amount. Again, after some time, after 2 or 3 months, if the sale proceeds has been realized by the exporter, again now the refund can be claimed by the taxpayer. Again, the refund can be claimed by the exporter, but few conditions has to be met as per the FEMA Act. So this is a new requirement of Rule 96B, which was inserted during March 2020. Now there is a clarification for refund of inverter duty. So always the tax authority cannot deny the refund claim of ITC paid on inputs at a lower rate. Say, as I told you, I have procured inputs at 5%, 12%, 18%. My output rate is 28%. So, sorry, my output rate is 18%. So 18 and 18. Now the taxpayer cannot deny the refund for 12 and 5%. Since it is being procured at a lower rate, Equally, this comes under the scenario of inverted duty structure. So definitely it is eligible for claiming as a refund. And also you have to ensure that refund is not applicable where inputs and outputs are at the same rate. So just because you have the input at 12 and output at 12, you cannot come under the category inverted duty structure. And clarifications with regards to input tax credit and exporters, people who are exporting, or all will be having the eligibility to procure those materials or procure those inward supply at a concessional rate of 0.1%. So those 0.1% is also eligible for refund. Tax authorities cannot deny that you haven't paid the normal rate of 12% or 18%. So I'm not going to grant you the refund. Taxpayers, the officer cannot deny such thing by telling those things. Always the exporters are also eligible to claim the refund when the procurement are done at a concessional rate also. So even when you procure for 0.1%, you are eligible for the refund. So the last circular, which was brought out 31st March 2020, circular number 135. The points already we could have discussed this. Refund pertaining to different financial years can be clubbed. As I told you, March 2020 and April 2020. Even though these 2 months belong to different financial years, these 2 months can be clubbed for making a refund application. The mode of refund is, this is very important. The mode of refund is that whenever the refund is being debited, when it is debited from the cash ledger, and again there is some deficiency memo, it has to be recredited. It will be recredited only to the cash ledger, not to the credit ledger. And whenever there is a debit in the credit ledger, it will be recredited to the credit ledger only and not to the cash ledger. Application of Rule 36.4. It's a new rule which is mandatory from 9/10/2019. This rule says that the taxpayer is eligible to claim the particular ITC, that is, he is eligible to transfer the ITC into his electronic credit ledger only when those invoices are reflected in his GSTR 2E. So otherwise he is not eligible to take the claim. And the new requirement for mentioning the HSN or SAC code was inserted. This is because many people were claiming the refund for capital goods, which was not eligible. So refund you cannot claim for your capital goods. Refund is always eligible only for your input services, only for two things, not for capital goods. So a new requirement was brought by the CBIC by way of a notification and asking for the HSN code. So just by looking into the HSN code, the officer can decide whether this is an input or input services or capital goods. If it is a capital goods, then directly it will go for rejection. You're not eligible to claim the refund. So now these are all the points which are being listed out in the circular, and we also have come to the end of the session. And at last I have given a very simple case law for a practical example of identifying what is the maximum amount of refund. See here, I have given you the export turnover, which is without payment of taxes, and domestic turnover, local turnover, which is 1,25,000, and the output IGST, which has to be paid for this domestic turnover, is 22,500. 18% of 1,25,000 is 22,500, and the ITC availed during the relevant period. So this is the relevant period. The question itself says that this is the period for which we are going to claim the refund. So balances in the electronic credit ledger is given here under the IGST 9.5, CGST 9.5, SGST 9.5. How we are going to calculate the maximum refund amount? So first you have to use the formula: turnover of the zero rater divided by the adjusted total turnover multiplied by the net ITC. So now the turnover of zero rated is export turnover 75,000 divided by the adjusted total turnover, which means the total turnover excluding exempted. So 1,25,000 plus 75 will give you 2 lakh total turnover. So 75,000 divided by 2 lakh multiplied by the IGST. The refund always should be computed headwise only. You cannot compute the refund amount put together all the heads, CGST, SGST or IGST. You can only claim for a headwise. So because each head may be having a different ITC balances. So here, look into the calculation. I have showed you IGST separately, CGST separately, and SGST separately. Now this is the balance. This is the maximum refund amount which we are eligible to claim. What is the maximum refund amount? 3,563, 3,563 under CG, and 3,563 under SG. Now let me look into the balances in my credit ledger. That is after utilizing the output tax, after utilizing the input tax for making payment against my output tax of 22,500. Say I have to pay IGST of 22,500. So now I am first utilizing the balance in IGST 9,500. So nothing is left. IGST balance is nil. Again, since it is not sufficient, I am utilizing the balance from CGST 9,500. So nothing is left in CGST. It is nil. Now still I need to pay some more. So I am taking the balance from the SGST amount. Now SGST balance is 6,000 rupee, which is left. So the maximum refund amount is the maximum claim in the balance or the maximum amount that you have computed. What you have computed is 3,563. But what is the balance left? It is nil. So now you don't have any refund claim under IGST. What is the maximum claim under CG? 3,563. What is the balance left in CG? Nil. So you don't have any refund claim under CGST. Now, what is the maximum claim under SGST? 3,563. What is the balance left in SGST ledger? It is 6,000. So lowest of the two amount, 3,563 or 6,000. I am having the eligibility to claim only 3,563 from the SGST as my refund amount. So this is a very simple example to make a better understanding. So we have come to the end of the session. So if there are any questions, please post it so that I can get it clarified.
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, the questions from the YouTube link are being posted in the chat box. So,
yes, ma'am.
Dear participants, by the time if you have any queries regarding today's session, you can keep on posting your questions in the live chat box.
Ma'am, is it the chat box from the Google Chrome or do I need to log into?
No, ma'am. I have posted it in the Google Meet itself.
Okay.
Is it available, ma'am?
Yes, ma'am. I'm not able to open the chat box. 1 second.
Or else, shall I read the questions?
Yes, ma'am. I've opened. Just now open. Okay. Mr. Jagadishwaran, suppose GSTR 1 is filed by the recipient in subsequent month, whether refund is eligible. Yes, actually, whenever after filing of the due filing of the returns, thereafter you are eligible for the refund. Doesn't mean that you're always denied from that point. So after due filing of this GSTR 1 return, maybe even after the due date also, if you pay late fee and file the returns, thereafter you can make the claim for the refund. Refund applied by supplier for accumulated ITC for January 2020, but the recipient filed GSTR 1 subsequent month as February, March. Whether refund is admissible? No, sir. Refund is not admissible for January, but it can be admissible after filing of the GSTR 1 return by the supplier, which means that in the subsequent month, February and March, you can consider this invoice for claiming it as a refund. It is only not eligible for January, but once when the supplier files and once when it is getting reflected in the GSTR 2A, from that moment onwards, it is eligible for the recipient to claim it as the refund. So that is what it is always advised the person to wait or to club some more month before filing the refund. So instead of filing it for January, you have to better wait for, and you can claim it on a cumulative basis. Like you can club January, February and March together. So always you need not go for monthly. Only if it is monthly filers, then you will be having the freedom of enjoying the credit in that month itself. The quarterly filers will always file it in the subsequent month only. In those cases, it is always better to club the quarter. So Jan, Feb, March quarter can be clubbed and filed as a refund application. What is the difference between, actually it is BRC. I think, yes, it is BRC and FARC. Both are same only. Only the name differs. Some bank may be issuing it as a bank remittance certificate. Some bank will be issuing it as a foreign inward remittance certificate. Both have the same meaning only. Only the name terminology differs, being different banks uses the different terminology. What is net ITC? Net ITC is the net input tax credit that has been accumulated during the period for which you are claiming the refund. Say, for example, I am claiming the refund for April to September. Only the ITC which is accumulated from April to September will be taken here. ITC which is being put into the credit ledger during March month, or the ITC which is being put into the credit ledger during October, November will not be considered here. So net ITC is only the period for which you are going to claim the refund. That period alone, ITC alone will be considered here. Why refund is denied when the supply is subject to export duty? See, when the exports are subject to duty, there is always a claim from the customs. So again, you cannot enjoy the double benefit here. So always duty drawback when it is given by the customs for a single export, you cannot obtain a duty drawback and then a refund. Either only one thing is allowed. There is no double benefit enjoyed. So when they said, what does mean by duty drawback? Customs is going to repay you the duty. Then what is the necessity to claim the refund in the GST scenario? So only one benefit is allowed. So goods which are subject to duty drawback, it is not eligible for refund claim. When the taxpayer gets a notice to return, how rupees 30 would be credited in his account? See, I have claimed the refund amount of 100 rupee. I have filled in the application 100 rupee, but the provisional order is for 90%, and then the final order is for 70 only. So almost 20 rupee has been credited into my bank account in addition, extra amount, which has to be repaid to the government. That I will repay it. Cash paid into my bank account, amount deposited in my bank account, again will be repaid to the government. But the 10 rupee, because when you apply for refund, whatever you apply for refund will get debited from the electronic credit ledger. So you have applied for 100 could have got debited from your credit ledger, but you have realized only 70. You have realized in your hands only 70. So what will happen to the balance 30? 20 you have to repay it back because it is not eligible. When you repay it back, it will be again paid into your cash ledger. 10 rupee, which is excess paid to you, not paid, which is excess debited from your credit ledger, will get recredited. Will get recredited to your debit ledger, because though it is not eligible, you can use it for utilizing some other payment of output tax, right? So that 10 rupee also will get recredited. So only what I am realizing in my hands, only what is the amount mentioned in the final order alone, that is only the eligible portion. So the balance amount, 20 rupee in cash ledger, 10 rupee in credit ledger, because all these 30 rupee has been taken from my credit ledger, right? It has been debited from credit ledger. So again, it will be recredited. Whether input services is eligible for refund? Yes, in accumulated ITC. See, earlier the officers were denying the credit on services, but now the officers are being given a circular that inputs and also input services are also eligible for ITC. Officers cannot deny that this particular invoice is services, so it is not eligible. Yes, very well. Inputs and input services are eligible. It should not be capital goods. Only thing, it should not be capital goods. Composition dealer claim refund. Actually, there is no point in a composition dealer claiming the refund, because a composition dealer will not always collect taxes. So there will be no amount in his credit ledger. There will be no amount in his cash ledger. So what is the point in claiming the refund? Hope there is no point in claiming the refund. Only when you have something in your cash ledger or something in your credit ledger, you have the eligibility to claim the refund. So composition dealer cannot claim the refund because his transactions are not subject to, he cannot collect taxes from the customer. Yes, hope I have answered all the questions. Yes, these are all the questions in the chat box. Anything else, ma'am? Madam, is that all?
Dear participants, if you have any queries regarding today's session, you can post it in the chat box. Ma'am, we'll wait for 2 more minutes, ma'am. If
Yes,
they
yes, ma'am.
some questions, we'll convey it, ma'am.
Okay.
Ma'am, hope the questions are over, ma'am,
Yes. Okay, ma'am.
because they're congratulating you through the chat box, ma'am.
Yes. Okay.
So thank you so much for being with us today, ma'am. That was an outstanding session, and that was a clear-cut explanation given by you. Thank you for sparing your 3 hours with us, and especially sorry for the inconvenience in between, ma'am.
No
That
issues,
created
ma'am.
a problem in between because
Okay.
the sessions were going extraordinarily, but in between interruptions got
Okay.
clash with the session. But the sessions were really good. Like the chat box is filled with tremendous comments, ma'am. So on behalf of School of Commerce, Bharatiya University, Dr. N. Jagdishwaran sir, and all the enthusiastic participants watching on YouTube Live, I wholeheartedly thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much for being with us and sparing your 3 hours of time for sharing your knowledge. Thank you, ma'am.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, all participants. Thank you, Dr. Jagdishwaran sir, for this opportunity. And thank you, madam. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Dear participants, it is for your kind attention that today's assessment link will be posted by 9 p.m. today. Dear participants, kind attention, please. Today's assessment link will be posted by 9 p.m. today. So if it is posted by 9 p.m. today, it will be available for 24 hours. So you can give it till tomorrow night 9 p.m. So kindly have an attention on it. Thank you all. We'll meet up for the tomorrow session.